Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our February workshop. I want to thank everyone for being here, and I know that we're all very excited to talk about all the great things happening in the city of Port St. Lucie over the next few days. So we're going to start with our roll call.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Pickett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Martin,
Here, ma'am.
Councilman Bana,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Caraballo.
Here, ma'am.
Please stand for the pledge. Do we have anyone that would like to speak at public to be heard? Seeing no one, I'll close public to be heard. Moving on to our first item, it says here an introduction from our city manager. Good morning, Jesus.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, staff, residents. Jesus Morejo, City Manager. I just wanted to really begin the day by really just thanking really staff for really putting such an amazing presentation that they've worked very hard. And it's another year of a lot of the city really getting a lot done. But I want to start with a just short presentation, really so we can get a really grasp of what has been accomplished for the past year. Avi?
Yeah, sound is not working. Take your time.
Here to celebrate the city of Port St. Lucie and reaching an extraordinary achievement, being named an All-American City for the first time in city history.
It's not easy to become an All-America city. We had a committee of experts that sifted through all the different applications and came up with 20 finalist communities from all across the country. And these were cities like Denver, Colorado, and Austin, Texas, and Seattle. Denver did not win. Austin, Texas did not win. But Port St. Lucie won, and you should be proud of it.
Port St. Lucie has done it by investing wisely, focusing on critical infrastructure like roads, drainage, water systems, and frankly, public safety. These are the priorities residents asked for, and the city delivered.
What we see in Port St. Lucie is something special. This is a community that truly works with the residents, with the businesses, with the faith leaders, with everyone in the community, together to address important issues.
It's a model of smart governance and community-driven planning. The Naturally PSL initiative, this is a perfect example.
Through the Naturally PSL Green Spaces and Places initiative, 744 acres of land will be developed as green spaces and places, including 198 city-owned natural preserves, 6 parks to be opened or improved, and 20 new miles of trails.
Tonight's awards honor the change makers among us, the individuals and groups who planted trees, cleaned up waterways, created Florida-friendly yards, and inspired the next generation through student-led projects.
We've launched a citywide innovation project by teaming up with the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative, Center for Public Impact, and the Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation. Over the course of a year, we've worked with over 1,000 residents who generated 1,000 ideas, and all this work that led to the city being declared an all-America city.
Let's continue to show the nation, what Port St. Lucie is made of.
Congratulations, Port St. Lucie.
Madam Mayor, that does not happen by mistake. If you really think about that accomplishment, how many years did it take for Port St. Lucie to get to this level? And it took this council, this staff, to make that happen. And I'm so proud of the team that we have. But that's in the past. We can't dwell on the past because we got to look into the future. As we always say, you're only as good as the day today. You got to look ahead on what's next. So what's next for us? As you can see here, just kind of going back slightly a little bit, 10 years of reducing our millage rate. $42 million in savings. I know Councilman Bonner always focuses on the savings. I just want to kind of highlight that. 41 miles of road resurfacing. 5.3 million residents coming into our city. Traffic. We know traffic is an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue, but this city, this council is planning on how we're going to be resolving some of these issues. And one of the things that I'm proud of that we've accomplished as a team, as a council, is a lot of these roundabouts. And if you notice, in the past, people were very hesitant on these roundabouts, what impact it would have. But I'll just say, look at Torino and look at the impact that created in Torino and how easy it is to move around the Torino area. So we're focused on the south side, on Parr, Savona, on how we can improve that. Understanding that St. Lucie West is one of our challenges. California is another challenge that we have in front of us. Savona is another challenge, and I can continue to name roads, but really St. Lucie West is going to be one of those areas that we're really going to have to focus on and get that project done, at least start the design of that project. Something else, we pride ourselves on the safety. You know, we can do all the roads we want, but if we're not a safe city, then what are we? And we've always been known to be a safe city, and we will continue to be a safe city. And I know with the chief and his approach on, building the staff, building the new training facility, and really staying at the edge of technology with what's coming. And there's a lot of great stuff that the chief is working on that we're all going to be proud of. Parks, it's something that in the past, I can remember back going 15, 20 years ago, where we had all these projects ready to go, but we could not financially afford it. But here's a tremendous opportunity that we have here. As you know, you've committed to getting tradition done. We're almost there. Stars and Stripes, the Port District, and not only, but Torino is another park that would be forthcoming. And hopefully we get that under construction as soon as possible. All I'm going to say is Southern Groves, tremendous opportunity, but I can assure you within the next week, an announcement will be made that is going to make us all of us proud and something that we've all been looking forward to and wanted something like that special here. So that's all I'm going to say, but I think we're all going to be proud. And another area that we need to improve is our flooding. And we know we have flooding throughout the city, but I know the Public Works staff is really focusing on how do we get some of these culverts replaced and how we lower the amount of flooding that we get throughout the city, specifically in the center of the city. That's an area that we really need to focus on. And I know last year we increased our stormwater fund. It did a slight increase. And most likely there's going to have to be a future increase on that, but we'll look at the numbers and see where it lands. But the bottom line is that we are beginning the process of the design of some of those improvements. Well, one of the things I've always thought about is like, and I always kept saying, you know, we need to be known worldwide. Well, what is worldwide? But I think we've put our mark worldwide with Bloomberg and what this team, council, staff has really, truly accomplished. So I can see great things for the city. And as you know, we're getting residents, other cities coming here to come see what we're doing. And it's really, I'm really proud of the city and the staff on what, as a team, we've been able to accomplish. And there's a lot more to come when it comes to what we can accomplish as a team. This is one that I'm very, very proud of, and this is really something that the residents wanted, council wanted, and also the staff. So just needless to say, we purchased 256 lots, 256 acres of land last year. The city eliminated over 1,000 houses from going in this past year. So that is something to be proud of. And just this is just a small indication on kind of where our dollars are going into. Just the general fund alone. Look at the improvements on our investment in capital projects. Why? Because the need is there. We need to invest into not only our buildings, our facilities, but really it's the overall, our general fund. It's just needed. You know, just the improvements that we made there at City Hall, on the lobby. These are facilities that have been there for over 30 years, and they really needed a small facelift, and really there's more to come. So what are my goals for 26, 27 for my staff and also for you? This really comes from me. My focus really is going to be in innovative services delivery. We need to have a conservative approach. We don't know what lies in front of us. I feel it, I understand it, I see it, I see the numbers, what's being reflected right now, and we just need to take a step back and really be really responsible with what we do, and really, but also focus on our values that we currently have, and really focus also on our training for our employees that we have, especially in project management. But really, it's create a culture where, at the end of the day, how do we get to yes? And that's one of my challenges I gave staff is like a lot of times things come our way, you know, and I know we have policies. I know we have to follow all of our policy, but it's like how do we figure out how do we get to yes? And that's something that has changed our culture. And we have to realize that our staff has changed from where staff was 15 years ago to where it is today. We've had new employees. And sometimes you lose that sense of that urgency on getting to yes. But I can assure you that that is one of my goals is how do we get to yes? How do we get staff to make sure that we're all thinking together and working together as a council, staff, and your city managers group? So I can assure you that is one of my focus, and I will continue. And really the other one is, you know, how do we get all these projects done and get these projects completed that we've already started? And I know some of them this upcoming year, we're most likely going to have 3 or 4 major projects that will be complete and something that we will be very proud of. With that being said, looking forward to really kicking this off our workshop and looking forward to your feedback and just hit us with whatever you have and, you know, we'll pivot to whatever we need to get done. But I'm really proud of this group and the team. So I will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Jesus, and you know we will. So any questions or comment? Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the beginning of the presentation. I do truly appreciate what your goals are and the refocusing portion, Mr. City Manager. Getting to yes is so important. It's always been part of our culture. And there are many elements that's made Port St. Lucie special with our team that's exuded high quality service to our residents. And, you know, we take it for granted. I think that's what happened. At the end of the day, you kind of just run with the way things go, and then you take it for granted, and you just think the new people are just going to catch on, or the new employees, you know, are going to understand the culture walking in the door. Everyone that's been here, if you've been here a long time and you know what the city manager is speaking about, we all have to actively make sure that we're exuding that to the next generation of employees that are coming in so the culture continues despite the growth. And I think if we're able to keep that culture of how do we get to yes, doing things exceptionally, you're going to have the largest city, one of the largest cities in the country that does something completely different, and that's provide excellent customer service even when you're a big city.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, we made that a really great change a few years ago. And you always look back and you say, okay, what have we done in the past that got us to where we are today? And I just got to say, from our partnership and getting involved with Bloomberg, I mean, we have changed the game on how we do everything in this city through strategic planning, through innovation, and all of that training and all that help has really propelled us to a place where I don't think we would have ever been had not been for that guidance. Getting our entire team working on innovation through strategic planning, getting everyone involved. And I remember being in the initiative and saying, you know what, this is great, and it was focused on mayors and, executive staff, but I was like, no, in our form of government, we need to bring this to all of us together. Because we all have to, in our form of government, we all have to work together and make decisions. No one person can make a decision to get things done. And the best thing I think we did was get everyone involved, bring the data and innovation and that strategic planning and human-centered design to all of us working together. And it's been through all of those ideas and all that ideation and all that working together that we've really propelled ourselves and got to where we are today. And I'm really grateful for it. I think we all are. We continue to see the benefits of the partnerships. And so it's been wonderful. And so thank you all. Thank you all for being so involved and diving into it, and because it's just been great. So,
Thank you.
any other comments for Jesus?
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. So we're going to move on to our Southwest Annexation Area Transportation Assessment Report of findings.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, Council, colleagues, and members of the public. Mary Savage Dunham with the Planning Department. Today we are here to receive a presentation of the draft initial findings of the Southwest Annexation Area Transportation Assessment. And I would like to introduce Dr. Delaney from TCRPC and Kakwan Ma from Kittleson Associates. They've been at the forefront of the analysis for us, and they'll be presenting the findings.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Delaney.
Good morning, City Council of the sixth largest city in the state of Florida. So, thanks for the opportunity to present this morning. As Mary mentioned, at the Regional Planning Council, we, in coordination with Kittleson and Associates, have been underway in trying to better understand the transportation challenges and opportunities in the Southwest Annexation Area. So this morning's presentation is the first formal presentation of the initial findings. They're still in a draft form, but they've been reviewed a number of times within staff, and council members have had a chance to have some exposure to them as well. And so I'll stay at a high level in the presentation, but happy to dive into the details, and particularly Kakwan can dive into the greater details if those questions arise. And so with that, just to zoom out for a moment, of course, following the manager's presentation, the city has really arrived at just a remarkable place. So national and international recognition for the city's really thoughtful planning and understanding of growth patterns and trends, and being able to position itself to really capitalize upon that input, that financial investment that comes from many different sources to maintain the wonderful quality of life in the city and the economic competitiveness where the city has positioned itself as a leader in the state and in the nation. One of the things that really characterizes the city's journey is its commitment to data-driven planning. And so these couple of images just illustrate some of those products that the city has developed over time to help understand, again, the growth trends, the patterns, the desires of residents, and then how to adjust public and private investments to create the quality of life that the city's come to be known for. Pardon me. And among those challenges, especially unique to the city of Port St. Lucie and the Treasure Coast region, is the rate of growth. And the growth that has arrived much more quickly than original projections, which is even harder. When you have a longer view on growth, it's a lot easier to get all the infrastructure in place to handle it. But the pace at which the city has grown is really remarkable in the region and in the state. And, when we look backwards and think about just a few years ago, right, in the life of cities, 50 years ago, these were the images that were marketing the city of Port St. Lucie. And it was a place that was really working hard to become recognized and to get on the map. And now the city really dominates the map. This is just a little snapshot of how the city has grown through its annexations. But what was interesting for me as a researcher is just kind of looking at how we forecast growth as a city over time. And so this chart is from the early 2000s. This was part of the city's comprehensive planning work. And the projections that were envisioned at the time were landing the city's future population at about 130,000 or so in 2020. Pardon me. And no community makes decisions without the most information available. Human nature and municipal decision-making always rely on making the best decision with the best data at the time. And this was the best data at the time. And if we chart out that population growth, it kind of looks like this. Back in 2000, we were at a population of about 89,000. And the reasonable projection, if you look at the kind of the slope of that graph, the reasonable projection at the time concluded that we'd have a population of about 132,000 with a continued rate of growth that would continue at kind of that slope that you see, a modest rate of growth. The reality is a lot different. So this chart illustrates what actually happened with respect to the city's population. And instead of 132,000 people, we had over 200,000 people in 2020. And so pivoting to handle that amount of growth is tricky for cities. Pardon me. The future population projection, of course, rather the current population projection puts us at about 260,000. So, arriving at the 6th largest city in Florida is a remarkable feat. That is a result of the city's excellent work in becoming visible.
Madam Mayor.
Sorry.
Just want to pause for a second. I just have a question that just popped in that I think I've seen it. I've seen residents ask it, and actually I have a question. If we go back to the previous slide, and
Sure.
You can't answer, Kim. If Cock1 can answer, that'd be great. When you look at the projected population that we had in 2020,
The 2020, I'll get back to that 2020.
and then to what we actually were, I mean, I have been approached by residents saying, well, why didn't you plan this better? Why didn't you project the population better? How does a city project a population accurately? And then, more importantly, at the council at the time making decisions, and even looking 30 years back when some of our annexations occur and those kind of elements, what can cause it to not necessarily project at what they were looking at back then? Like, what causes those discrepancies? Because the public's like, the city didn't plan well enough, and we're just dealing with the data that we had at the time. And so why is there such a delta?
Sure. And that's a great million-dollar question. There aren't really easy million-dollar answers for that because population projections are tricky. There are so many factors that influence rates of growth, and that's why that line isn't a straight line, right? That line has bumps and curves because recessions happen and buying trends happen, and a big storm in the Northeast really facilitates buyers down south. A calm winter in the Northeast slows down the rate of growth. The ability for the school district to keep up with schools that have capacity is another factor. The city's ability to design and deliver its infrastructure is another challenge. Bad hurricane season, growth slows down. Calm hurricane season, growth speeds up. So there are hundreds of variables that influence population projections. So what we see at the Planning Council, right, consistent with how the city makes its decisions, is every community is fighting to make the best decisions it can with as much information as it can get its hands on. And the city is absolutely in the leadership position in doing that, in really analyzing trends, working with the private sector who's delivering units to you, who is motivated, and working with your residents to understand how do you feel about the city and what are you saying out there. And so it's a really long answer to a really hard question, which is population projections are probably the most complex things cities have to do. And we don't have control over many of the variables that we try to understand when we make those projections.
Well, and it's interesting because I think you did answer the question, and you answered it for me at least, which is the actual population estimations were based upon without having a true crystal ball of all the things that could happen. It was, if everything stayed the same and nothing changed in the world, that's where we would be. But we couldn't project COVID. We couldn't project, like you said, the storms in the Northeast. We couldn't project all these things to know that population was going to move faster. And I don't think the state of Florida as a whole could do that either. I think COVID, we know COVID played a huge role of bringing people to Florida in general.
Sure.
So thank you for that answer, and that's going to help me with conversations with the residents as well. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, I can enlighten a little bit on that. The utility back 25, 30 years ago, when we do our consumptive use permit, this is how much water you can withdraw out of the ground. We come up with estimates. Back in the day, it was estimated, and what you looked at the utility service area. Remember, at the time, some of these annexations did not take place, but we had to look at how much can we serve, because really, if you can't serve, you're not going to have the residential, point blank. So when we looked at the utility service area back in '94, when the utility was purchased from the county, it was estimated at 450,000 residents that we will have in the city. Would it speed up and slow down? Absolutely. And we estimated that it was going to happen because everything's cycle. So really, that is the best number we have. Utilities, but if you expand the utility service area, the population will also increase. So that's your trigger. Your trigger is going to be, you're at 450, what's next? So if you annex, then that will increase because now you're going to expand your utility service area. And also, it also took in consideration some of the residents that we were serving in the county. That was taken in consideration too. So the best estimate back 25, it was 450,000 residents.
Can you answer that okay?
Thank you.
Sure. And I think this graph kind of illustrates that. You know, the city wasn't in as successful in annexation mode until the 2000s. And the 2000s is really when the city's mass began to expand and the ability for people to develop more quickly arrived with that. So that's kind of where that departure is. So I'll keep going if that's all right, Mayor? Okay, super. And so we're at about 260,000 people today. And then when we think about the history of where we've been, the city doubled its population in 20 years. That's a remarkable statistic to arrive at 260,000 people today. And then going forward, where the trends tell us the city's heading is knocking on the door of 400,000 people by 2045 or 2046. There aren't a lot of cities that can claim that as a characteristic. So again, so rapid population growth in a successful market brings lots of challenges with respect to how infrastructure arrives and is delivered and is funded. And so that's really the focus of the presentation for today. When we think about the study area that we were challenged to look at, this map is a map of the city, and our study area is really the southwest annexation area, which is identified in blue, as well as those areas that influence what happens in the southwest annexation area. The city now has a northwest annexation area also, which is in the pink. And those developments, by the way, that already have arrived on the ground in the southwest area are identified in color. Now, I was thinking about today's presentation, and it was nostalgic. I've been with the Planning Council 22 years as of next month. And when I started with the council, one of my first jobs was analyzing the transportation impacts of these DRIs. So it really has come full circle. And back then, when I went out and did field work to understand what's coming in this area, there were mostly cows. So it was really hard to kind of envision that this would have a volume of what totals 75,000 people in this area and around it that are really fighting for space on the transportation network. In the northwest area, of course, Those colored polygons, if you will, represent developments that are known or inbound. And then the other new piece of information is all the development happening in northern Martin County and western St. Lucie County outside the city limits. Again, there were just cows on that property when the first population projections were being put together, and those are all houses and destinations that are generating pressures on the transportation network. So, so the approach for this project, as tasked by your team, was to look at those population trends, those impacts, the infrastructure that's committed, and have a better understanding of whether or not particularly 3 key roadways would be necessary to support the transportation impacts coming down the road. And so just by way of background, a couple of tables that summarize the development that is coming into this area. So the first one is the Southwest Annexation Area. What's notable about this graph, or this table rather, is that between the original DRI approvals and today, the number of residential units has grown to now 50,000, an extra 6,300 units, in addition to the 43,000 that were originally envisioned. And then on the industrial side of the page, this area now has an expectation of almost 12 million square feet of industrial space, a remarkably successful product from the city's Southern Grove work. But that gives us now about 30 million total square feet of non-residential space and 50,000 units in just the southwest area alone. When we shift up to the northwest annexation area, additional traffic impacts on the horizon, another 10,000 units, really not envisioned back when those roadways were initially being designed, and about 6 million square feet of non-residential space. And then outside the city limits, again, additional traffic impacts that weren't originally envisioned. So the total gives us about 75,000 units in the southwest area, the northwest area, and then northern Martin, southern St. Lucie, western St. Lucie, and another 55 million square feet of non-residential square foot, 53 million square feet of non-residential square footage. So that's a lot of people looking to circulate in the district. That's kind of the sum of all of those tables. And so what's happened with respect to roadway obligations is illustrated on this next couple of slides. So this map illustrates the roadway obligations as of 2011. The different colors illustrate the number of lanes that were assigned to developers to provide through the DRI agreements the city had negotiated. Over time, there were some modifications to those roadways. Different things happened, and we talked a bit. It was a great question from Councilwoman Caraballo about how do you predict what happens. Roadway modifications get changed because markets change and economies shift. We've weathered a couple of recessions over time, and so some of the roadways were taken out of the mix. And the balance of roadways that remain in today's DRI agreements is illustrated on this slide. Again, the study area being the southern portion of the Southwest Annexation Area. And those dashed lines are roadway obligations that exist. They are pledged to the city. They are, in many ways, the ownership of the city. They're their public assets that are again, subject of discussion in this study. So zooming in on that area, there are 3 key roadways that were analyzed in this analysis. So the first one, and really the focus, is the continued commitment for the Hegner-Parr Drive to be provided as it's envisioned. And so there's those blue question marks are the alignments of the roadways that are the subject of discussion. So Hegner-Parr, the east-west road that's going from Range Line over to Community. And then there are 2 other roadway segments that we analyzed that the team asked us to look at. So the first one is the Marshall Parkway interchange, which has been the subject of lots of discussion at the TPO. And so the question is, what happens when that interchange is built or not built within this district? And then the third segment that was analyzed is actually proposed by a developer to the south in Martin County. So that's not proposed by Martin County, but by a developer within Martin County. And that is a connection that is just west of I-95. That kind of aligns with Sandstone Boulevard at the bottom right-hand corner of this map. And so there is a history of council action on this question. In fact, probably in this room about 2 years ago, there was a council staff workshop that took place, and the council took a few positions unanimously to direct staff from a policy standpoint. And so the minutes from that workshop are on this slide, and I highlighted 2 things just to point out because it was informative for us as a team to analyze where the city had been. The first one is the council determined unanimously not to remove any roadways in the annexation agreement and that all east-west roads should connect to Range Line Road. And the second just highlighted point is maintaining existing DRI order requirements. And so that's the history of the council action on this question. In developing the study, we did undertake some public engagement to be sure that we had the best available data, because that's always the challenge when you undertake studies like this. And so there were 2 outreach meetings that took place in November, one with our partner public agencies, including the TPO, DOT, and St. Lucie County. And then we also met with the developer representatives for ACL, GL Homes, and Mattamy, along with their traffic engineers, just to confirm we had the right data in hand and the methodology that we're using to analyze the network made sense. And there was a concurrence across the board that we were using the right data and that the methodology made sense. And so with that, when we think about transportation networks, the measure that's used with respect to roadways is referred to as level of service. And so level of service is really looking at the ratio between volume and capacity on various segments of road. And it ranges from A to F. And A, B, and C, which are highlighted in those green circles, tend to be kind of free-flowing conditions, so there's not a lot of delay in the network. Even at peak hour, there's not a lot of delay in the network. But as there's more demand for roadways, level of service shifts into D, E, and F, and so those are colored on purpose. So D levels of service are where there's an expectation that there will be delays, particularly at rush hour, peak direction. It gets a little busy, and there might be 2-3 traffic lights to get through at peak hour. E and F conditions become intolerable for a lot of drivers. There's a lot of congestion, a lot of delay, a lot of phone calls to City Hall when people are frustrated because they're sitting in traffic. And so with respect to levels of service for the study, what we did was pick a threshold of what 0.7 volume to capacity ratio. And 0.7 tends to be the ratio where below that volume to capacity ratio, you have those free-flowing conditions. You don't have a lot of delay. But as you exceed that, you start to experience those delays. Now, one of the things to point out is in the study, we were conservative in using average annual daily trips, or AADT. We did not do a peak hour analysis. And so it's the most generous way, if you will, to think about roadway capacities. We would expect the peak hour condition would be worse, and the peak hour peak direction would be even worse than that. Okay, so, but we're on the most conservative end of that spectrum, which is looking at average trips. Let me just check in with Kakwan to make sure I've said that correctly. Kakwan, am I okay still?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'll keep rolling. So to analyze the network, we developed a couple of scenarios. Remember, there's 3 roadways that we're thinking about, and each of them is individual. So there's whether or not Hegner-Parr continues to be maintained as the developer obligation that it exists as today. There's the Marshall Parkway interchange. Does the city continue to advocate for that interchange to be built? And then there's this developer proposed road to the south, and the question is whether or not the city allows that connection to happen. They're each individual decisions, but for the purpose of the analysis, we grouped them together, so we had some scenarios to test. So that gave us 8 scenarios to test, and that's summarized on this slide. And so just to kind of clarify that, there are 4 scenarios that do not have the Hegner-Parr Drive. There are 4 scenarios that do. There are 4 scenarios that don't have the Marshall Parkway interchange, and there are 4 that do. And then there are 4 scenarios that don't have that developer proposed road, and there are 4 that do. So that gives us 8 scenarios. And those are all summarized on this table. Now this slide's going to get pretty busy because it's going to have to do a lot of work. It's the main summary slide. So that said, we have 8 scenarios, and that gives us between 20 and 24 segments to test within that study area. So that's summarized on the left-hand side. And remember, we're using level of service as our standard measure as we evaluate the performance of the network. And so what happens when we plug all that information into the model is a forecast as to about how much congestion will there be in the overall network based on those different scenarios. And so the green side of that table is where we have what would be considered acceptable traffic flows, and on the red and yellow side, it's where the network starts to break down. And there's really a clear distinction. If you group those scenarios where Hegner Drive exists, we would expect to have less overall congestion, less overall delay in the network than if we are without that road. And I'll touch on those individual scenarios in the next couple of slides, but this is really the main research question for the study, and this is without question a fairly clear answer to that question, which is Hegner, the inclusion of Hegner Parr creates a much lower level of congestion in the network. Not a surprise. The most competitive cities are always the most connected cities, and this is kind of that finding that we would expect to see in a study like this one. But into the details, Kok Wan, in his transportation wizardry, developed an overall congestion factor for us to use as a measure when we think about the district, and that's a kind of adding up all those different segments and all the different congestion expected, and that gives us an overall measure for the entire network. Again, focusing on those three particular roadways that are being analyzed, simplifying that in just this aerial because we don't have as much confusion when we just think about the condition today. There are a series of 8 slides that illustrate those 8 scenarios. So for each one, there's a map that illustrates the transportation network. There are 3 blue boxes on this one. So this is the first scenario. We don't have any of those segments, and those are you'll see those vary as we go through the slides. And on the bottom left-hand side is a little table that illustrates about how much congestion we would expect to see in the district through the 2040 model year, right? 2040, Kok Wan? 2045. 2045, sorry. 2045 year. So in scenario number 1, we don't have any of those connections in place. What would we expect to see? More overall congestion in the district than otherwise. The absence of Hegner Parr means traffic has to go somewhere. So those cars are going either on Marshall or Becker. So that's why you see Marshall and Becker in yellow on the slide. Without having the connection at Marshall Parkway, the other 2 interchanges have to carry all the load. So the interchange at Gatlin and the interchange at Becker, as you can see, not only are they not green, but they actually have some purple in them, which means they actually are beyond capacity and reaching failure at those 2 interchanges. But without the connection to the south, what happens is our residents who leave the city and go to the jobs that will exist to the south have to use the interchanges to get there. And likewise, our employees that live to the south and come into the many jobs that we've created have to use the interchanges. So in the absence of that connection to the south, the interchanges carry a much heavier burden, and that's a contributing factor in what we see in the findings in this slide. Okay? Kok Wan, please jump in if I get off track, okay? So scenario number 2 then is a scenario where we add just that connection to the south. We don't have Hegner Parr and we don't have the Marshall Parkway interchange. So what happens in that scenario? Well, Becker Road is a very busy road because, again, we have our residents going to jobs in the south and we have our workers coming to jobs from the south. And so Becker becomes very busy, as does Village Boulevard. So just adding that connection without the other 2 gives us, again, a fairly high amount of congestion in the district, as you can see in that little summary table over on the bottom left-hand side. Scenario 3, still without Parr, but adding the interchange alone. What happens? The interchange becomes an attractor because people now have a way to get in and out of the city, in and out of this area, differently than they can. We get some relief from the other 2 on the other 2 interchanges. So we don't have purple anymore up near Gatlin. We shift to red. And we don't have purple anymore on Becker. Becker gets some relief because Marshall becomes a place for people to get in and out. But with the absence of Hegner Parr, again, what you can see is Well, there's a lot of traffic on Marshall and there's a lot of traffic on Becker because those cars don't have the ability to disperse, which is what more efficient networks have. And so those other two roadways become very busy. Last scenario without Hegner-Parr is one where we test the interchange and the connection to the south. What happens? The interchanges, again, operate a little with a little less congestion because there's a different outlet. The Marshall Parkway interchange gives that to the network. And that road to the south creates the most congestion we see in the district, just that road to the south without the internal connections, because we become an attractive destination, and that destination quality means that we have traffic coming into the district that we might not otherwise have. And so without the internal connections, it becomes a very congested scenario for the city. But as we go forward, the next scenarios all have the Hegner-Parr connection, and so I'll just touch on each of those. If we just have Hegner, but not the other two, we have a really free-flowing condition. We've siloed ourselves as a city. It's hard to get in and out of this district, but if you're in the district, it's easy to drive around, so you can see the core part of the central part of the district is very green, but the two interchanges are under a lot of stress, and so the reason there's purple lines are on the map by Gatlin and Becker is because there's no way for folks to get in and out. So they can move around internally, but they can't get in and out. So the interchanges become overloaded. Yes, ma'am.
So we know what's planned in terms of residential units, obviously here, but does this also, the study factor in all the residential that is entitled already out west? Just want to clarify.
Yes, it does. It includes all of the polygons that were shown on the previous slides of all of the developments. We're looking at a horizon year scenario with the assumption that all of those are in.
Okay, just want to make sure the public is aware of that.
Yes. Right. And it also includes all of the developer-committed improvements assumed in place as well.
Great, thank you.
Right. And I'm glad you raised that point, Mayor, because all that development, when it's looking to get to I-95, it only has those 2 points to get there, and that's why those interchanges are so oversubscribed.
Right, and it's also, I know we talk about this a lot, but it's very important to reiterate, is that it's going to take years for commercial development to follow any residential whatsoever. So especially in those years where that the western developments are happening, all of those individuals are going to be coming into Port St. Lucie within our boundary for services.
Right.
And we already know what it looks like today out west, right? And we already know that roads are being triggered already now because of all the development and because of all the population boom that we have seen. So it's very easy to look at this and say, yeah, this makes sense. But if we have another boom, if we have all these factors that we talked about before that we cannot, we don't have a crystal ball for,
Right.
it could be worse,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like, so,
And to your point, retail follows rooftops.
yes,
It doesn't precede rooftops.
Right.
So you have to go, if you're buying a gallon of milk or a pair of sneakers, you're driving in and you're getting the gallon of milk and a pair of sneakers. So, because you don't have other destinations
Right.
that will arrive, like the residential will. So,
thank you.
Okay, so scenario 5 I touched on. Scenario 6. Scenario 6 would have that connection to the south and the Hegner-Parr Drive, but not an interchange. What happens? Fairly good flowing conditions in the center of the district, but the interchanges, again, as you can see, and Village as well, really carrying a lot of traffic in this scenario. Scenario 7 with Hegner and the interchange, but not the connection to the south. What happens is the Marshall Parkway interchange really carries a lot of demand because the interchange itself becomes an attraction, and so Marshall Parkway becomes a very busy road. As I mentioned, folks living to the south and working here, and folks living here and working to the south are using the interchange to make those morning commutes. And so those roads, those connections become very busy as a result. And then the 8th scenario is the most connected scenario. And so that is where all 3 of those alignments are presumed to be in place. It's not the least congested scenario, right? Because we haven't siloed ourselves. We've created a connection to the south that isn't otherwise there. The access to the interstate is dispersed across 3 interchanges, so each of them can function more effectively. And that interchange to the south does other things for the city. So as we think about this as analysts, it doesn't have the least amount of congestion, but it has other things that work perhaps in the city's favor, because you do have folks who can more easily come into the city for goods and services and jobs. And so you have expanded economic potential that you might not otherwise have. The other thing you do is you have shorter commutes for your own residents. So your own residents that are working to the south, or your own employees that are coming into the city, don't have to use I-95 for every trip. And we have those examples to the south where communities didn't have those internal connections. So folks get on 95 and they travel 2 exits to get off to go to work. And those sections of I-95 that play that role are very tricky, especially peak hour, peak direction, and the interchanges just can't be built large enough to carry those volumes of traffic. So that connection to the south, again, although this isn't the lowest overall congestion, it may have other benefits to the city that you may want to consider from a policy standpoint as to whether or not that connection happens. So, Mayor, did you have a comment? No? Popcorn, did I cover that okay?
Yep.
All right. And for the staff, did I cover everything okay so far? All right, so I'll keep rolling. So into conclusions. So findings, initial findings. So what do we find if we zoom out? 1, Hegner-Parr is a very influential and important roadway for the city. Every scenario that includes Hegner has less congestion overall than the scenarios that do not. It also is an important reliever for both Marshall and Becker. And so additional laneage capacity on those 2 corridors is pushed out further into the future for you. You also have better dispersion and you have more reliability. You have more resiliency when you have more connections. Again, the most connected cities are the most competitive ones in every city that we look at as peers. Pardon me. There will, though, need to be a consideration, we suggest, for additional roadway improvements over time. So when the Marshall Parkway interchange is constructed, if and when, Marshall Parkway will be a much busier road. So that's an example where you may need to start to think about more capacity sooner than later. And there are other segments that also don't have enough laneage to carry all the traffic volumes that are coming in. Again, you have 75,000 residents and you have 53 million square feet of non-residential space circling around the district. It's not a surprise that the roadways will need to have more capacity to handle that. So the noted ones, Tradition Parkway, Range Line Road, Community Boulevard, Village Parkway, and Becker, all roadways to think about over time to add capacity. With respect to the Marshall Parkway interchange, clearly it's going to relieve congestion at the 2 interchanges on either side. That's an intuitive finding. You would expect to see that, and we certainly see that in the data. It also becomes an attractor, and so that's one of the things to think about. When you add a new interchange, it's going to pull traffic that otherwise isn't interested in going there, right? And so that really accelerates the demand for Marshall and really raises the question for you as a board as to what you want to do with respect to capacity on Marshall. The north-south connector to Martin County is really complex. So as we think about it as analysts for you in this scenario, in this study, it does, when you add a new connection in a roadway network, you bring in more traffic. So if you just look at that connection as in its relationship to traffic congestion, I think, again, intuitively and in the data, adding a connection brings in more cars. So you're going to have more congestion on the network. However, it also does other things for you. If you live in Port St. Lucie and you're heading south for work, instead of getting out to 95 and going down to your job, and you can use that internal connection, it might change your commute from 45 minutes to 20. That's life-changing for people. That actually is an economic generator for you because you then have the ability to reduce transportation costs, increase discretionary time, and facilitate more economic activity, or people get into the ball game to coach their kid, or whatever happens in that extra time that you get back in your life. The other thing it does is it creates expanded economic potential for you. If it's easier to get to the city to acquire goods and services, people do that. That's human nature, and that's what traffic modeling shows as well. So again, that connection is a more complex connection than just evaluating it, whether or not it creates traffic congestion or relieves it. It is complex, and it's really a section that should be further analyzed, in our opinion, as we look at the data. So with respect to recommendations then, what we would recommend based on what we see in the data is one, the city should absolutely retain the development requirements to build the Hegner-Parr segment. When we tried to understand the impact of that segment, it's about a $27 million value, if you will, for that roadway to be constructed in its current commitment based on FDOT's standard calculating models. So as an asset, then, it's $27 million of just roadway, and it's 55 acres of land in the 6th largest city in the United States. So the value to you as a public resource is really significant. And so whether or not that road happens in the near term or the long term, retaining that as a public asset for your community is a very strong recommendation that we have in looking at the data again, at the city's request. The second recommendation is the city should advocate for the Marshall Parkway interchange. It's an important interchange. It releases the demand on the other two interchanges. It makes you more resilient, and it makes you more connected. All things that make cities more competitive. And then for the southern connection, the recommendation is the city should further analyze that connection. It's very complex. It has transportation impacts, economic development impacts, and quality of life. And you may have developer contributions to other roadway segments as a result of allowing that connection to happen that could have other benefits for you as a city. So we would suggest that's an analysis that needs a little more thoughtful consideration as you think about what to do. And then zooming out, overall, what we would recommend to you is the city should, as it thinks about future development, one, continue to require road rights-of-way be dedicated with development, but actually make those dedications time certain instead of triggering them to other things so that you have more control over your future, you have more predictability, you can be more clear. Councilwoman Caraballo, when residents ask you, well, what are you doing over there and why is it so busy? You can let them know. We actually have developed roadways that are committed to us. We will receive those roads in this year, and they will be built in this time frame. So having that predictability and having that confidence in the transportation network is a way to answer those kinds of questions and also better handle changes as they come over time. The other recommendation is to require roads be constructed earlier in the development time frame. Like, we know retail follows residential, and because that's the case, there's a lot more traffic on the network than we might otherwise envision. And so having those roadways constructed earlier gives you those apertures. It creates more resiliency and better dispersed traffic patterns are more efficient and they're safer. The roads don't have to be as wide also, which makes a safer condition. And so the suggestion is those delivery dates should be tied to construction phases, but not necessarily trip counts. So when you get to phase 2, that road is dedicated to the city and it gets built. And you have the ability to do that. The 6th largest city in the state of Florida has a lot of influence in the development game, as you know, as council members. So, and then otherwise, the recommendation is the city should really consider additional land banking as you go forward. We work with cities, of course, across the region. We have 53 local governments, but we work across the state. There's no city that looks backwards and says, man, we got too much land in the bank now, we should get rid of it. That's not the conclusion that cities come to. The conclusion cities come to is, geez, we wish we had land banked a road over here, or we wish we had land banked a bigger park property because we don't want five 5-acre parks. We need one 25-acre park, and that land is hard to get today. And so land banking for all those different infrastructure needs, not just transportation, but parks, preserves, other infrastructure needs, highly recommended. The volume of growth that's coming, you see what the population projections are. At the Regional Planning Council, we do too. Land banking is a great strategy to get yourselves positioned to be as successful as you want to be and deserve to be as a community. And so with that, let me pause. Kakwan, more to add to that? No? Team? Colt? Okay? Mary? We're good? All right, so there you go. So happy to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned about advocating for Marshall Parkway. We've been doing that for years. Being on the TPO, it comes up every single meeting. It's in DOT's hands. They know And that has been advocated, I think, since we were gifted the property out there in Southern Grove. So we're already on that. The other thing is that Marshall shows 2 lanes. Why? That is going to be a direct connection from Range Line to 95. Why it is at 2 lanes, I have no clue, when all the other ones are 4, 6, and 8. So that really concerns me as to why that was done. I know Hegner Parr has been an issue. If it was from Riverland to Range Line, I really don't have an issue, huge issue of letting that be trails or a paseo. You just mentioned about the land banking, and for public parks and preserves, it would be a perfect area for out there. There's not much out there. We already have 1, 2, 3, I think there's 6 east-west connections, and if you go on the west side or the east side of 95, we only have 3, which the population is probably triple of what the west part is. So that's where I'm not quite understanding all of that, or, and again, nobody has a crystal ball. We really don't know. This is just a guessing, trying to figure out, what's going on. The connection down to Martin County, I'm still not sold on that. It's been brought up again at TPO for many, many times. I'm not sold on that. I know you mentioned about, well, people can get on there and go down south to go to work. We're trying to get people to live, work, and play right here in Port St. Lucie. So that one really concerns me, and I just don't think it would be a good fit for that southern connection.
Councilwoman Pickett?
Thank you. The Marshall Parkway can't come quick enough. We are overburdened on Gatlin and Becker Road to get into Southern Groves. That's your only 2 connections in and out of there. With that being said, there's over 20,000 people, or 20,000 trips a day come from 95 to Sandstone Boulevard, Village Parkway to get into Southern Groves. Talking about the bridge to Martin County, I see the need for it, but I also see the need to have a second entrance in and out of there. Just having one, we're creating congestion at that Sandstone Boulevard Parkway. And if we don't think about that, 10 years from now, we're going to have to go back and spend countless dollars to put another road in that we should have thought about on the front end. So take that in consideration. The Hegner Parkway, that's a no-brainer. That needs to stay. But the interchange there at Sandstone Boulevard, coming into Southern Groves and going to the proposed bridge in Martin County. I'm out there every day. The mayor, she lives on the other side. She sees it every day. There is so much traffic there now. Wait till Costco comes in. Wait till Costco gets there, and that's going to increase the truck traffic. So that's why my thoughts are we need to have a second way to get in and out of the Martin County economic development area. Thank you.
Councilwoman Bonner?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm really glad we did this study. I was initially very open to the prospect of removing Parr and placing a Paseo. And the reason I was because I feel that today the traffic conditions, we're behind. We're behind partially because the 55+ ITE code is being used to calculate our network, and it's delayed roads, and we need roads today. And so I was excited about the prospect of if we can get more roads developed sooner, within time certain, within the next few years. I was excited about that opportunity to improve the day-to-day lives of our residents today. You go into a study with a hypothesis, and then you look at the data. And I do believe the data showed how important Parr Drive is for the long term of the city. I do And maybe you can touch a little bit more on it, because one of the questions I asked was one of the arguments for removing PAR is that you have enough lane miles, you can widen these other roads. And I don't think our scenarios really answered that question as boldly as it could have, but you did have answers for me in our meeting. I'm very open to the connection to Martin County. I believe we're one Treasure Coast, and part of being one Treasure Coast involves economic activity. I believe the economic activity that will result from that will have benefits in terms of sales tax, other jobs and opportunities for our residents, and will shorten day-to-day trips for residents who live there. And so, for those reasons, I'm very much in favor of that. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So I'd like to start my comments by talking about time, and a lot of my conversation with Dr. Delaney was about time. And, as humans, we say time is the most precious thing we have. It's the one thing we can never buy back, to get back, or do anything to get more of. And, I have become, and I'm sure some of us have become, very sensitive to the residents' comments, especially when they say, well, you're just going to build what you're going to build and you don't care what we think. And, I do nothing but eat, sleep, and lose sleep over what the residents, think, and trying to make sure that my decision as one of 5 is the best decision for the residents, even if they might not like me later. And this is a difficult one, right? Because when you look at the modeling and you look at some of the choices we have, we are aware that some of these choices might create slightly more congestion in the future. But what we don't have a measurement is time. And so with all the technology that is out there with AI, I would love to see further modeling when we bring back modeling that discusses time of travel. Because you could have a congested area, but if it took you 10 minutes to get from your home and you spent 5 minutes in congestion, that's a 10-minute travel time. If you have to travel 45 minutes out, it doesn't matter if it's a straight shot with no congestion. You still spent 45 minutes going from your home to your job. And that time is what I think the residents quantify the most when they look at their day, when they look at their life. You're always going to have individuals that spend time in traffic and then yell and scream about how did you let this traffic happen. But the reality is that time, to me, is number one, followed by the inconvenience of congestion. And when you look at the projected development to the south of us, first of all, I would like to say that when I spoke to the developer, I selfishly said you should annex into the city, because obviously we need more jobs in the city of Port St. Lucie. But they are going to be in Martin County. They already have their approvals, and that ship has sailed, I know. But I cannot bring myself to inconvenience our residents to travel around Martin County or to travel through other routes, knowing full well that we could provide a direct connection for them to go to work. How we get that to happen, how the city manager negotiates that, that's a process still to be had. But I do feel that time is so important. Listen, I've lived in the city my whole life, and I've worked in Martin County many years, and just to be on US 1, I would take an hour out of my day home and back to go to Kaner. I can't get that time back. I lost hours with my kids as they were growing up. So it might cause a little bit of congestion, but the time it will save, that's like something we're giving back to the residents. That's so important. Also, live, work, and play, and Councilwoman Morgan, I appreciate your live, work, and play, because that was also in my notes. That's been the goal, is to live, work, and play right where you live. Port St. Lucie's out of space. We just need to accept that. We've got no more room. Everything's entitled. And unfortunately, our forefathers who lived with what they had in front of them did not think about the amount of jobs that we're going to need to sustain a population of this size. We have to be thinking about jobs, and we have to accept that maybe those jobs won't be from the city of Port St. Lucie. They might be a neighbor to our south or a neighbor to our north, but at the end of the day, it benefits the city residents of the city of Port St. Lucie. And so I really do want to find a way to make this work. As I said to the developer and to our staff, our population is so large. Guess who's filling those jobs? It's going to be the city of Port St. Lucie's residents that are filling those jobs. And so, we do have an obligation to find a way to make it work as much as we can. The developer also has an obligation to mitigate their impacts for the growth and for the impact that they're creating on our roads and help us minimize the congestion moving forward. As far as PAR, I have never been a proponent of removing PAR. I'm so glad, like Councilman Bonner said, that the data now also justifies and backs that up. And, so I'm glad that my hunch and my gut told me we need every single road in the city of Port St. Lucie. So the data shouldn't stop here. I do want to bring in time because maybe this will also help our conversations with the residents. I think there's so much discussion about congestion, but we're not talking about the difference of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you have something else before I go?
Well, I just wanted to clarify, I've never been a proponent. I've just been open to it if it made sense. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
All right, thanks. So I want to thank you so much, and Kakwan, thank you so much for this. It's been a long time coming, and it was absolutely so necessary, especially since when we have these discussions, and when our team has the discussions with the development community, it always looks like it's our side versus your side. And we all have to work in partnership together, right, in order to get things done, in order to make decisions on what's in the best interest of the city. So we really needed this look from you, Dr. Delaney, and Kakwan, and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to give us that objective opinion. And so that's why I so appreciate it. And typically, I'm not a fan of studies in the sense that a lot of them tell us what we already know or intuitively what we know, not necessarily data-driven wise, but this is, again, that perfect scenario of we needed this confirmation, and especially from the third party, an objective view. And I've never been a proponent either of taking out a road. We learned from our mistakes in the past, or we pivot based on decisions we've made in the past based on the information we had at the time. And the biggest mistake you can make is not learning from those mistakes and not learning to pivot and think differently. And so we learned with the Paseo, and I'm just going to say it, we learned with the Paseo that it is not smart, the current one that's in existence. While it's nice, while it's mostly nice to benefit residents in a community, it's not so much as the public benefit that we thought it could be at the time, or any, what did you say? Right, and how it was put forward. We didn't have the crystal ball, knowing that there's going to be so many residents coming in such a short amount of time. So when we looked at using trip modeling for active adult, right? It might have been fine had we not had the population boom that we had. But we know now that great that information was, but it doesn't work for today. And so taking out a road, giving up our right-of-way, and I especially like the fact that we gave a dollar value to it and talked about the land and the amount of acreage. I don't think our citizens would want us to give up a $27 million asset. That doesn't make sense. And if you put 50 residents in a room, I don't think one of them would say, yeah, give up $27 million asset, especially when it relates to less traffic congestion, the benefit of time, like you mentioned, Jolene. And so there's no way I'm going to ever support giving up this essential roadway. We all know Marshall is needed. We need it today. We see what's happening on Gatlin Boulevard with the interchange, getting to it, even with the improvements that DOT has made, even with the improvements that we have made with the right turn lane onto northbound Village Parkway. We still see the backups and the congestion, but there's only so much space. So you have to go to the next point and say, all right, where else can we put in an interchange to help relieve some of that? Not only from the Gatlin side, but also from the Becker Road side as well. So vitally important that that happens, and it's very frustrating for all of us because in working with DOT and just what we know from how long it takes to get things done, we know it takes many, many years in order to get an interchange. But we saw, especially in the southwest area, southeast area, when the Veranda Gardens subdivisions were all put into place, we saw that there was that developer partnership, right, with Huizenga's in order to get the turnpike done, right? It got it done faster, and I can't even imagine where we would be today if we did not have that connection on the southeast side of Becker Road with the turnpike. I mean, it would be an absolute disaster. So I try to look at all these things very holistically. And so when we're talking about our Martin County connection and knowing what we've dealt with getting the interchange for the turnpike and looking at a global holistic view of what are the quality of life benefits in time, what does it look like from an economic development standpoint, the importance of being a very connected city and giving different options for people to travel. The connection does make sense to me, and it is a matter of how does it happen. And my concern is that we've learned so much, and we know, especially with these studies and with all the professionalism that we have, you know, in our organization and working with our partners, we know that there's a way to do it the right way. It is a matter of our city manager working to figure out what that looks like and then engaging with more conversations with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, TPO. However, like I said, we have the right people in place to make smart decisions, the right people in place that know what not to do from things that have done in the past, not necessarily mistakes, but just from what didn't work well in the past. And so if we don't take advantage of that now, in the future, when this happens, because eventually it's going to happen, and we have to acknowledge that as well, there will be a connection. Because a future council, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, could say, yeah, good, let's see what that looks like. But you might not have the institutional knowledge and all the professionalism that we have around us in the future that we have today, especially with the institutional knowledge and learning from history. So this is our opportunity. This is our opportunity to do it right, to work on it, and to flush it out, and to come to a really good decision and figure out how to make that connectivity work for the benefit of our future residents. Because it's going to happen. And if we sit here and say, no, it's not going to happen, that's just not going to be true. That's just not true, because it will. So we need to take advantage of our opportunities. We do need to think about our economy, in which we're going to have a presentation a little later about our economic outlook. And so I am very open to seeing what that looks like in the future. Any other? Yes.
There's one thing I wrote down that I forgot. Also, I'm interested as, I don't know the DRI that the developer has with Martin County. I'm interested in understanding too, is there any obligations currently, road obligations, that connect to Glades from Martin County? Just because I was also thinking the modeling showed our city limits. I don't know what the modeling shows when we incorporate any road obligations that they might have with the adjacent agency. And let me just check, make sure. Yeah, and that's, I was thinking about the larger cities because we are now a larger city. I was thinking about like West Palm, Miami, and I'm thinking of the population in those cities and how much they have to travel to go into work and how congested it is. And even with Marshall projected to have slightly bit of congestion, I just think we need to have every interchange that we have available to us to help move people around the city and help them get to jobs. So that's why any interchange that we can get, that's going to be critical for us. Thank you. But, yeah, the modeling.
Okay. All right, so we have a list of recommendations here that we need to act on.
Are we doing it by consensus or motion, Madam Mayor, for point of clarification?
Let's do it by motion so that we have it very clear.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to retain the developer requirements related to the construction of Hagner and Parr Road segment, advocate for the Marshall Parkway interchange, especially as it provides relief to Gatlin Boulevard and Becker Road interchanges and more travel options for Port St. Lucie residents and businesses, and then also to further analyze the effects of the developer proposed road from Martin County, including transportation, economic development, and quality of life implications and potential developer contributions to the transportation network. And I would also like to make the motion to give the city manager authority to begin discussions with the developer and potentially negotiate those connections.
You have a second?
I'd also like to add to that,
Okay.
to explore having a second option into the Martin County property.
I will amend my motion to include that, Councilman Pickett.
And I'll second.
Okay, second. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any final discussion?
Shannon.
Yes.
Workshop, informal. Because they're being all lumped, and I'm for one or two of them, but not all three, I will be saying no, only because they're all being lumped into one motion.
Okay. Any final discussion? All right. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Pickett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Martin,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Bona,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Caraballo,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Morgan.
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay, we have one more. Sorry.
These are the policy recommendations. Those were the specific ones.
Okay. So as to the policy recommendations, as stated, continue to require road rights-of-way be dedicated with initial development approvals and time certain for dedication. Require roads to be constructed earlier in the development timeframe with specific delivery dates tied to construction phases rather than pursuant to trip counts. And so those are the two main ones. And then pursue additional land banking where possible for transportation, parks, preserves, and other infrastructure needs. Is there a motion?
I move we adopt the recommended policy proposals.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for that great presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right, we are at 10 o'clock, so we are at our break point. So we'll be back in 15 minutes. Okay, we're back from break, and now we are going to hear from our famous Captain Infrastructure. Take it away, Colt, on our capital projects.
Good morning, all council members, mayor, city manager, residents. Appreciate the introduction, but I'm really up here just to introduce the real heroes of our team, which would be Mr. Tom Salvador, Antonio Balistreri, and then after that, we'll have Mr. Peter May and Lewis Johnson presenting some stormwater. Then we'll also have Mr. Clyde Cuffey giving you an update on our developer obligated roadways and statuses there. And then Mr. Salvador will get to close it out again for us on the payment plan, let alone have another presentation later in the afternoon for Hessen sales tax. So hope you all are ready for a lot of public works because we got a lot of information to provide you.
We're ready for you.
Right.
And you know what, Council? I think we need a nickname for Mr. Salvador.
Well, since we've removed ties, I was wondering where their capes. That's what I was going to ask. Where's your capes?
Oh, yeah.
Since they're heroes.
Please don't. Please don't.
No?
Well, to be fair, Colt gave himself the name, so. But it was a great name. So.
All right.
But we
Well,
like to have a little bit of fun here.
yeah. Definitely. Again, Thomas Salvador, Public Works. Good morning, Madam Mayor,
Morning.
Vice Mayor, members of council, all those in attendance. As Colt alluded to, the heroes of Public Works, heroes of the department, everybody who works for you in this entire city should be considered a hero, including all the teams who back us up. I may be standing here, but there's many people behind me who are incredibly dedicated and committed to providing quality products for the citizens of Port St. Lucie. So I don't want that to go unnoticed.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct.
And as we move on, we'll move into some of those projects here. It's not all of them, but it's just a sampling, if you will, a charcuterie of projects.
Nice.
I don't think the board is big enough.
I know Stephanie's brain's going right now like, what can I come up with here?
I was going to say, the board isn't big enough for the charcuterie.
All right, so let's kick it off with something that I think we're all very happy to look and see and smile upon. Port St. Lucie Boulevard, Segment 3, Gatlin to Darwin, 100% construction completion.
Thank goodness. Thank God.
We are only dealing with
Yay.
paperwork. We're only dealing with paperwork on the back end, but the construction's done. So
Right.
let's celebrate the wins when we can get them.
Yes.
The silver lining has finally found its end, so there it is. Happy, happy. East Torino Parkway roundabout, another one completed, and the turn lane completed. I know everyone who visits that area has found that it is a wonderful improvement, and the residents are very happy with it, and the artwork is fantastic. If you haven't been up there, please make sure to take a drive through because the pictures don't do it justice.
Excuse me.
Yes.
One added little, and it's not us. If the school district would move the school bus stop because it clogs the roundabout and cars are around it waiting for them to let off students. Please, hear me now, Dr. Prince.
Okay.
Okay.
Relay the message.
All right. Floresta Drive Phase 3, our third phase of the long-running project for Floresta, is well underway. We are on schedule currently with a roadway section preparing to open up here in probably April, May. A short section will open, another section will close, but that is like completely open except for final lift of asphalt, curb, sidewalk, gutter, sod, landscape. I mean, this thing is going to look beautiful, almost like it's completed. So we're really happy to see it moving along and making pace. So far, no hiccups. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Awesome.
St. Lucie West Boulevard and Peacock Boulevard, 70% complete. They are continuing the work there. They are trying as best they can to get everything done as soon as possible. As with most projects, unknowns happen and unforeseens happen, but we're still moving our way through that. Tulip in College Park, the long-awaited project there is underway since Port St. Lucie Boulevard had ended. Again, we held off on doing that one because we didn't want to cause too much of a disturbance with all the traffic. Well underway, things are moving forward currently, and we expect to see some completion in fall of '26. Gatlin-Savona intersection improvements, another location that is very important. And I kind of like to piggyback off the previous presentation where we talked about studies and looking at things and how things can change over time. When the project first kicked off, there was the design and the idea of what we should do there. But as we've seen with the explosive growth, that there should be there can be some additional improvements that will ultimately help us in the long run. So right now we're in discussions to look at a revise in the design and talking to the Department of Transportation about what that would look like.
Great. We know that this is a very heavily congested intersection, and there are many, many residents who are waiting for us to do something at this intersection.
Yeah, and not to find a point on it, if we did what we thought we were going to do or what was designed originally, it may not have been the best benefit to the residents long-term.
Right.
So having the ability to take that step back, look at things holistically and make a change, although it may take a little longer to get there, it's going to provide a greater value long-term. So I just think it's really important to always remember that when we're dealing with these projects throughout the city because of our growth and because of how we were originally designed.
Thank you very much for highlighting that. It is very important to state. Yes?
Hey, Tom, when we do the Gatlin-Savona, we're going to address the stormwater issues in that area?
I believe there's, where are you, at which location are you referring
Savona
to?
going to California.
Savona going north?
Yeah.
We have the design working up to the first intersection, the second intersection, to the north. So anything that's dealt with on the sides with sidewalks, you'll get curb and gutter, you'll get drainage.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And we'll take another look at it just to make sure, but I wasn't aware of that location, so I'll put it in my bank.
No, I think you're referring to the Okemuk stormwater project, which ties into.
Whole other thing, because this only goes a couple intersections north of Savona Gatlin. So the Oak Hammock project is an entirely different water quality project that they're going to be bringing for you here after I get off the dais. I'm not really good at speaking to it since it's not my road. Par Savona and Par Darwin roundabouts, design is 100% complete. We're in the property acquisition phase. So currently, that is the deciding factor on when we'll get to construction. That's moving forward at a pretty good clip as well. So from all signs are pointing to yes.
So how much property acquisition did we need? If you
I
could
will
just give a ballpark.
It's basically the four corners at each location. Some locations, it's just the clip, enough to get the size of the roundabout and the improvements to fit. And some others, I know there's been talk about acquiring a little more to kind of save more green space and preserve more land.
Okay.
Bayshore Boulevard, well underway. The design is nearly complete. We've got a little ways to go here to fall 2026. I say nearly complete because we're at the point where it's really fleshed out. You're starting to see what it's going to look like. You've got the basis of design, the residents are aware, and we're going to start moving into property acquisition phase for anything that is needed so that we can get ahead of the game prior to construction.
Okay, so can we, as a council, Jesus, see what that looks like? Because you're talking about property acquisition. And I know when the public engagement meeting was put on, there were some questions about the property acquisition and what would be needed. And I think it would just be important for us to know what exactly is needed from a property acquisition standpoint, because there was some concern from residents. So we would be able to speak to it better when we're asked the question. So that would be really helpful.
We'll provide a list of what those, especially with the design being almost complete, we'll know exactly what clips we need. So we'll provide that information.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, now it's not speculative. You kind of know where you're going, so it helps to know that. California Boulevard Phase 1, as you know, staff went to Bloomberg Harvard on the procurement, I never get it right, for procurement information to learn how to do better procurement with our partnership. Right now, we're waiting for a start on that. What we have is going into design build versus a design bid build. So we're trying to learn, and our staff is trying to learn, how that process works and how to do it correctly. And that's a new thing for our group. So it's just taking a little lead time to get into it, but as we do, we will be delivering on that product coming forward.
Okay.
Savona Boulevard Planning and Conceptual Design. This is the feasibility study that's collecting the data on what we should be doing out there, what we can do, and what you want to do. We're going to bring that before you as soon as it's complete, and we'll run you through all those options, similar to what you went through earlier this morning with the Marshall Parkway.
Great.
St. Lucie West Boulevard, same exact thing, studies underway. We're getting there. We should be having deliverables here shortly to bring forward and show you, here are our options, these are what they're going to do, and this is the improvements that it can make, and this may be some of the things that will not happen, so we don't, have the pie in the sky attitude of it's going to fix everything. What are the pros, what are the cons, and how's it going to pan out? And that's also being done with our friend Kakwan, who was up here just a moment ago.
Great.
East Torino Parkway, another one under study to get the data. We don't want to just go out again and widen the road if we don't have to. If we can make some minor improvements, roundabouts, turn lanes, this sort of thing, we can save a lot of money and get bigger bang for our buck. So having the data to support our actions in the future is exactly what we want to have. It helps when you talk to the residents and for us to bring it forth to you folks. South Bend Boulevard, it's another one. All of these are underway. These studies are going. So although you may not see construction happening, we are in the planning phase, and that is very important for all of these projects. So again, I keep reiterating, it's so important to have the data. Marshall Parkway and I-95 interchange. I don't know anything about that. I've never heard about it.
Good morning, everybody. Antonio Belstreri, Division Manager for Traffic Operations. Just want to say a quick note to City Manager's comments about roundabouts earlier, not to take away the momentum, but we've seen so much, like we always see the expression in residents' faces when we explain why we're really focusing on roundabouts, and when we explain that it's 90% safer than traditional, intersections, all of a sudden, they get it, and it's a big deal. So just wanted to make that comment that we're seeing that in all our public outreach. So Marshall Interchange, I think we've talked about it a lot this morning. There's obvious consensus to continue to advocate for this intersection. And we, knowing that this was a very important asset, we started this study last year. We now have a document that we're going to continue with our momentum and speak with FDOT and get this going as part of a formal request. So this is the focused study from the wider annexation study. This is focused on the Marshall interchange, and we're going to move that forward.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So at the December TPO meeting, DOT did a presentation and showed 2 or 3 scenarios for the interchange. And the TPO voiced which one that they were for. So isn't that, it's pretty much advanced from this point?
So there was a simultaneous efforts. You know, this past year, the TPO did a separate study with their consultant, Corradino. Kittleson did our study. And so both reports they've come with very similar results. And the arrangement of the interchange, whether it's a full interchange, I think that's what you're talking about. So if it's a full interchange or if it's a west-only interchange, a braided or a T interchange, all those need to be evaluated regardless as part of the FDOT's PD&E study. So if there is some discussion the council wants to do about, you know, specifics and any desires as a group, this is, you know, we could do that now, or there'll be another opportunity, I think, as part of the PD&E study that FDOT is going to be conducting to really dig into the details. So I can pause here if you want to go into that. Or...
Well, and Antonio, if I can add here, I think part of the question, Councilman Morgan, is, you know, why are we doing our study when TPO did theirs? We were trying to attack it from all angles to make sure this project gets implemented, because there was at times we weren't sure if the TPO was going to include it. We've since gotten them to include it. Another benefit of us doing this feasibility study from past discussions with DOT, if we do the feasibility study, we can turn that over to them, and that allows them to do the interchange justification report and the PD&E study concurrently to try and help speed up the process.
Right.
And
Thanks, Cole.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I was going to say, and right there, Colt, when you said these studies, Tom, are important, I think people might think the data is like optional. They might say, why are you spending money on getting data? That's stupid. I understand that sentiment. Before I was on the council, I used to see that, but Colt just stated exactly why we do studies. Is in order for us to apply for these projects, in order for DOT to take us serious and move us up on the list or complete certain application processes, we have to do these studies. And I want to make sure that the residents know that.
Yes.
We're not doing studies just to study.
Correct.
We're doing studies because they have to be shovel-ready for us to get funding.
Well, yeah, and the justification has to be there. Because if the justification's not there, then DOT is not going to program it, and DOT is not going to spend money on it.
That's correct.
So, regardless of whether we have local funds to contribute or a developer has funds to contribute, they have to be able to state that it's needed and in partnership with us.
Correct. And in addition to that, there's very little grants and very little funding opportunities from the state or the federal government to actually do studies. Sometimes you're lucky enough, like on the federal side, we do have the RAISE grant that we were able to get some funding for on Village Green. Thank you to Congressman Mast. But, you know, the reality is there's very little dollars they want you to invest first for the study, and then they'll build construction, or they'll help you with construction.
Madam Mayor, just to add to the conversation, I think there are 4 critical components here that Marshall now is becoming to be one of those special projects for our city. If you look at Gatlin, which we all know, Becker Road, Crosstown, St. Lucie West. St. Lucie West is associated with the interchange, but St. Lucie West is one of those critical roads that we've already identified that is a major roadway that we need to expand. So to me, St. Lucie West and Marshall almost becoming equal, because if you have a gridlock between Gatlin, Crosstown, and Becker Road, what happens to the whole west? And we're talking about this today. Think about what's going to be 5 years, 10 years from now. If you look at tradition, it's going to become a gridlock until that interchange gets built.
Right.
So to me, that needs to be one of our major priorities, both St. Lucie West and Marshall.
And Madam Mayor, and Antonio, to your question, I believe it was the braided intersection that you and I spoke about that helps from creating more congestion and helps move the traffic a little better, am I correct?
Reducing congestion, like a continuous flow, yes.
So if we were to advocate for one, that would be the one I would like to advocate for. If DOT could build it that way, that'd be great.
So the TPO has all the scenarios. I think you can still watch the December meeting. I don't know if you were there or not, but, and there was a consensus for that. So it showed all of the scenarios. It was a very good presentation.
Thank you, Councilwoman Morgan. I wasn't there. I wasn't unable to be there. I was actually in Tallahassee for the city. But, you know, I do understand the TPO does make recommendations and also approves those things, but the city also has to approve and provide our recommendations from the city perspective. So I do think that having both perspectives is important. So thank you for that.
Was that the one that was chosen? Because I wasn't at the TPO meeting in December either.
I think, I'm not sure if there's one specific one that was chosen. Colt, do you?
Correct. At this stage, it has not specifically been chosen. That would be chosen during the PD&E and the design stage, but their, you know, preferences go a long way in the PD&E. And then to the Vice Mayor's point, if we're in alignment with the TPO, it even helps that out as well too. Because another way I kind of like to look at it is a continuous flow is similar to a roundabout where it keeps the traffic moving at all times instead of creating stop-go scenarios with traffic signals. And should be less maintenance going forward as well too, because how often do we have to work on our traffic signals, which is basically daily, as Antonio could tell you.
Stephanie, did you have something?
I was just trying to jog Dave's memory. My work husband.
I remember us talking about it, and I remember us choosing one, but the exact one we chose,
it was
I
the
do not
braided.
remember.
It was.
But we had a very lengthy discussion about
Yes.
Marshall Parkway interchange, and I do remember at the same time Joe Marassa got up and spoke about the
Martin
bridge
County
connection, the Martin County interchange, and how those two could interconnect. But I mean, the more information that we have to be able to present to DOT, the better off we're going to be, and the more, hopefully, the quicker the project will get done, based on the data that they have. So I'm not against what you guys are doing. So drive on.
So as we move forward in the process discussing the Marshall Parkway interchange, if we can just have a presentation, Jesus, for the whole council, I think it'd be beneficial since Vice Mayor and I were not able to be at the December TPO. And of course, Councilman Bonner is not on the TPO, so it's important for the whole council
You
to
can
see.
ask Peter to come provide us a presentation if we like that.
I don't know that we need to do it now or when we get further along in the process. I don't know how long it would take to do now if you have it. If you don't have it now, it's okay to, I think it's okay to wait.
We can reschedule it.
Let's not interrupt the flow here.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate the focus on this because there's obviously pros and cons to the different arrangements. So we can flush those all out and not rush that. And I think just as a nuance, obviously, I think a big part of that conversation is going to be deciding if it's going to be a west-only interchange, and at that point, obviously, the braided side probably makes more sense in terms of ideally with reducing congestion. Okay, so just to, I guess, close out this slide then, we are planning for the worst-case scenario that FDOT is going to require us to fund the PD&E study. Hopefully that's not the case, but one of the other reasons why we did this study in advance was we were informed that it could potentially allow the interchange justification report and the PD&E to occur simultaneously.
Right.
And obviously, we're trying to do everything as fast as possible and expedite everything. So we were able to present that, plus the TPO study, plus the annexation study, trying to attack it from all angles. As Colt said, it's really, I think, we at the city know everything that's coming down the pipeline before everybody else, and I think this last year has been a lot of coordination and communication with the other agencies for them to really see what's happening in the city and what's coming down even outside of the boundaries. So having to prepare for these studies and have all those platforms and communications is really beneficial in that sense. Okay, so in advance of Marshall Interchange happening, we have more control over this intersection, Tradition Parkway and Village Parkway. The original scope of this project was to look at or introduce protected intersections from a safety standpoint for pedestrians and cyclists. There was an analysis done as well that was presented to council, and the consensus was, to really look at going back and finding out other improvements that could be done, the cost of those improvements, and what could really help reduce traffic delays and congestion at this intersection. I'm happy to say that we're supposed to be getting 90% plans completed with left turn lane extensions, additional lanes for right turns, which we are going to end up bringing back to council as well to go over that. So I think it'll be probably sometime. We're gonna work through that in terms of timing, but the goal is to keep this moving. It'll act like a bit of a some sort of Band-Aid, if you will, before the interchange, if it occurs. So this is something that we really feel strongly about will help traffic.
Mm-hmm. This absolutely is a priority.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care what time of day you're out there. I mean, of course, rush hour is the worst, and I've been out there several times, but all day, every day, there's a lot of traffic out here.
Yeah, and we did have a public outreach in August. We wanted to be respectful of residents, wait for the summer, and so as soon as everyone was back and school was back in place, we had the public outreach. We got different opinions, feedback, which we were actually able to go back and bring to the design team and incorporate those into the final design. So we're looking forward to presenting those to council and getting everyone's input.
I know we're going to get to the developer funded later, but this also highlights why North-South A is so critical, because coming from the west in this area, there's only one way in, and that's through Tradition Parkway. So it's vitally needed to get North-South A connected.
Mayor?
Yes.
When we do the Tradition intersection improvements, are we looking at timing of those stoplights there? Because it makes if you can move more traffic off Gatlin onto Village, if that stoplight's red,
So,
what do we do?
So we've actually engaged a timing engineer, a traffic engineer, specializes in synchronization and coordination plans. We are going to be doing timing and coordination along the entire corridor for Village, from Becker all the way to Crosstown, as well as the Crosstown corridor. That's where we're starting from, knowing that that's probably the most highest priority at this point. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a huge part of this, and we're coordinating with the two design teams accordingly, because when you get the westbound right turns, they continue straight up and they'll hit the Meeting Street intersection, and then you'll have queuing on Meeting Street. It's actually imperative that we make sure to coordinate these signals. So yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Can I ask a question about the timing? So recently when we were at the TPO, and you guys were in the audience, there was this really cool idea that was brought forward that a youth was developing AI timing that was real time, so to speak. I'm not trying to say that he's inventing something that might already be out there, but I'm wondering, even though we converted all of our signalization and our timing to a certain software and to a certain company, I know years ago, and that took some time to do. Is there newer software or is there newer designs or equipment that we currently don't have that does like timing on a real-time basis already?
So, great question. Let me back up a bit. So the group that came to talk, we've actually already had them at Dwyer, and really nice efforts that they're doing. I think it's great for students to learn about what's going on there. A funny story is when we were presenting the stuff that we do, one of the students got up and said, "They don't need us. You're doing all this stuff." So, yeah, we're always looking and monitoring the technology that we have, and there is an evolution going on. We are having to replace things, and we're constantly, troubleshooting and learning and improving. So, there's stuff going on in different cities. We're looking at different cities, what they're doing. We're comparing notes, and I'd say we're probably, I want to say at the forefront, but like we're definitely up there in what we're doing. We're pushing, trying to use adaptive and edaptive, a lot of bells and whistles. So, there's two parts to this, right? There's the bells and whistles, and then there's making sure that, I keep using the analogy of, tires on a car. You still need the tires to work and be in good condition to be able to use the bells and whistles. So we're trying to do two things. We have to upgrade some of our old infrastructure to be able to use the new technology, which we're doing. So yeah, we're pushing it, and it's going to continue to evolve. We're even coordinating with the police department in terms of using more technology and AI with our cameras. And but yeah,
That's great, just because I know that there was significant investment in the timing, the smart signalization that we did. And, sometimes I know through my experience working with IT and all the other stuff what the city does, sometimes those softwares that you might be using aren't updating, and you might have to go to a new software or a new type of technology.
New hardware, yeah.
And I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I just want to let the manager know, for myself, I really feel if there's a pilot program that you think that needs to come forward, if there's new technology that's going to address some of these main corridors and issues immediately, please don't hesitate I would love for you to bring it forward for discussion for the board, so we can be on top of that as much as possible, because it is the number one concern for the residents.
Yeah, if I may add in here.
Please do.
One thing that I think we had a silent win on, and by silent win is, no news is good news. Well, this traffic consultant Antonio was referring to studied Becker Road, and what they recommended and we implemented was a time of day signal coordination. And by that I mean most signal coordinations are based off of the peak hours, AM and PM peak hours. And so that can cause some unwanted congestion during middle of day operations where we won't have the necessary east-west heavy traffic flow. So what this consultant actually did was analyze the traffic for all day long and set up 5 different scenarios that go in sync depending on the time of day. And so we're looking at that, with what Antonio was saying on Village Parkway and Crosstown and Gatlin, because yes, we do have this adaptive that is very similar to the AI, but it's only constrained, or it is constrained to that corridor, so it can't really see what's coming from the north and south. So what we're looking at doing, and our consultant's going to tell us if it'll work or not, is maybe during certain times of the day, we go to a signal coordination to help relieve the traffic. And then when we're not in those heavy peaks, we go back to adaptive so it can adjust. So to the point, yes, we are more than willing and wanting to look at all this different type of technological innovation, but we're going to look at it from every single angle.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
It's interesting that you bring up Becker Road and the timing, because if anyone's out on Becker Road at rush hour, and either in the morning or in the afternoon, the backups are extremely considerable. When you have so many cars trying to get to 95 in the morning and it's backed up all the way to Port St. Lucie Boulevard, that's a very long stretch of backup. So, and so it's Becker Road's going to have to be looked at again too. And I don't know if there's any more space out there for widening or not. I don't know that there is. You guys can tell whether or not there is.
We're pretty much built out right away to right away. It's practically at the back of the sidewalk.
Well, that's really important to note and to say publicly, because there are people out there that are saying, oh, make it 8 lanes, right? But we know that if there's no more spacing, there's no way that that can happen. But it is an issue. So we have to try to figure out ways to address it. And definitely when you have no more capacity, right, then you have to go and look at the timing of the traffic signals. So thank you for that.
Yep. Yeah, so Becker was basically our pilot for the timing in recent years anyways, so we can look at and see that it was working. So we're expanding that program, and definitely have some updates on that one. And I think I'll go to the next. Speaking of technology, good segue for our preemption efforts. So this is a bit of a joint effort. We've been collaborating with our IT department, who's been really great. They're paving the way in front of us with making sure that all our remaining signals are connected to the fiber network. And so they'll definitely be done way ahead of us. Currently, our vendor is programming the new devices, and so we expect to get them in about 4 weeks. And our contractor is lined up to go in and get them and start the installation. They know this is something that we want to do, and it's a priority, and so they're going to do best efforts to try to get done as soon as possible. So it definitely, before the end of the year for sure, that's what they promised us, and they're going to push to try to get that sooner than later.
Madam Mayor, on this, I want to just let you guys know, I experienced this the other day, myself and my husband driving. Communications, if you could, they really need to do a informative to the public about this new signalization. We're sitting there, and my husband's like, the light had just gone green, then it immediately went red, and he was like, what just happened? And he was like, why did the light go red? I said, there's an ambulance coming. He's like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I know that. And so 2 seconds later, an ambulance came through. I knew that because I knew what we approved, but I just want to make sure that we're communicating to the residents that if this happens, at least be vigilant too, because I could say, look behind you, you're going to have an ambulance coming, see if you can make room, because it stopped, so.
We should definitely do a PSA about it, for sure.
Thank you.
From an educational standpoint.
And Shannon, I believe the fire district already has that maybe they could share.
Yeah.
That they have that about the preemption lights.
Yep.
That would be great, and you know what? They need to put that out on social media more.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and we've had conversations about, I've had conversations with the chief about upping the social media presence, and I know we just got a new PIO there,
yep.
but definitely needs to happen. So.
Yeah, so
Thanks.
we've coordinated with the priority corridors with the fire district. When we started coordinating this with them, we went through the presentations, and it has actually an app that they use, which I'm sure some of you are aware of, that actually, if you have it on your phone, it'll tell you something's going on, whether it's a fire truck or an ambulance. But I think, some of our challenges have been also trying to educate that this will most likely cause a lot of congestion, but it's for the greater good in terms of safety and trying to, keep not just our emergency personnel safe, but also, trying to get response times and get to people's homes in emergencies. So it is what it is, but so we're getting this done.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions on this part of the presentation? No? All right. Move on to stormwater. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mayor, Council, residents, and everyone else. I'm Peter May. I'm with the Stormwater Division in Public Works. I'll be speaking on the Stormwater CIP infrastructure projects, giving you an update on those. The first project we'll talk about is the D11 Canal Improvements Project. This project is being built in concurrence with the Floresta Phase 3 project. The project right now is approximately 30% complete. They began at the canal outfall into the St. Lucie River. There was a little bit of dredging that went on as a separate portion of the project because there were some access problems for some of the residents there with their boats and whatnot. So that portion of the project is complete, and we're progressing upstream as the project continues. And that should be completed probably by this portion of the project. It's tied in with Floresta Phase 3, but it will be completed well before that project. This project, SWW1 rehab, this was completed last year. It's working out pretty well so far. There were a few little kinks with some of the SCADA since it was a cloud-based system, but they've got that all worked out from my understanding. The next project we'll talk about is the Hawk Bend Slough Stormwater Treatment Area Design and Permitting. We're right now about 70% or 75% complete with that. We're getting in for permits probably the end of this month, and hopefully have all of our permits by the end of May if everything works out okay with that. We don't have anything for construction yet on that. But this is also going to be tied in with the HPS 60 project, which is being designed concurrent with this, which is the next slide, and I'll talk about that. Oh, actually, I think I can just talk about it. I guess it was pulled out of that slide, but the HPS 60 structure that's adjacent to US 1, we are going to try to get that under construction late this summer. And it should take about a year to complete that project. So we'll look forward to getting that underway. And this next project we'll talk about, this was just completed. This is the Whitmore Drive baffle box. It's just up the way here. That was completed in the end of November. We are having some little tie-ups, or not tie-ups, but a closeout. And that's about it. We have the grants tying up those, and otherwise that project is complete. It worked out pretty nicely. You can see a picture of it there. That's actually the project with an aerial view. The next project, once again, we're going to Floresta Phase 3. These are the 2 baffle boxes that are being constructed with that project. The first baffle box is at the D10, and that's already been installed, but the other work around it is still being completed, the pipes and other work, the roadway work, all that infrastructure is still being put into place. The D8 canal is just just to the north of that, and that will be happening once the roadway work gets to that point, and they start working on that, which should be in the near future, my understanding. Watershed and B improvements. This is we have 3 water control structures, and actually there's 4. And the next slide, I believe, is the 4th one. This would be the A16, A17, A18 structures. The A16 and 17 structures have been, the sheet piles have been installed. Some of the site work, this is the ones adjacent to Sawgrass Lakes community, right off Parr. And so the sheet piles have been installed for those 2 structures. None of the roadway work, none of the culverts crossing have been completed yet. The A18 structure, which is over by the Turnpike Canal, or the E3 canal, that there's just very little work that's happened there. They're waiting on some of the components that they need for that. They still don't have the sheet pile, a lot of the other stuff they don't have, but they've done the conduit interconnects with a 19 structure to the south. And that project's going pretty well so far and should be probably completed by the end of this year. Once again, I was talking about the A14 that's being built along with those other structures. This is going along pretty well. This is further ahead of the other ones. They actually just capped the sheet pile here this last week. I think they only have a little bit of that left to do, and they are in the process of removing the old structure at this time. So that should be completed ahead of the other 3 structures. So that should be completed hopefully by summer. This is the big project here. This is the Oak-Amick Water Chute Improvement Project. Right now, we're in the procurement process. We just received proposals for that, so it's in the evaluation process right now. So hopefully we get this under design by beginning of fall with the planning, design, and then ultimately with the permitting, and then construction. We'll probably start, probably looking at late 28 would be getting under construction, or early 29. And then that would be ultimately completed by 34 is what we're estimating at this time.
Okay, so we can't wait till 2034.
Right.
We can't wait till 2028 for design either, so there's something's got to be done here. I don't know whether it's design build or what, but I mean, this is.
We'll go ahead and evaluate.
Okay,
Get back
thank
with
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. The next project we're going to discuss is the Elkham Basin Improvement Project. This is Elkham, the entire stretch of the canal. There's sediment removal, detritus as they call it, a lot of bank stabilization. There's 3 control structures that need to be replaced. 2 of them are in really bad condition. The other one just needs some repairs, the furthest one to the east. The other 2 are outdated and need to be replaced and entirely reconfigured. So that will be a pretty expensive project too, of this project with all of the limits. Probably put in some bank stabilization features within there where we have some access issues. And we estimate to start that, we're going to get this into procurement hopefully within the next few months and then get started by October is what we're estimating right now. And then completing it sometime at the end of fiscal year 29. I already spoke on this a little bit. This is the Hog Pen Slough Water Control Structure APS 60. Once again, yeah, hopefully get that started for construction sometime beginning of the summer and then finish that in about a year, a little less than a year. This is the E8 Canal improvements. This is up north of Gatlin. This is from Tampico to the control structure and then back to the tie-in. It's basically a riprap project. We have access issues to get in where we can't really maintain this properly because of fences right up to the top of bank. So we have a lot of canal bank failures. You can see in the bottom portion there, it's kind of indicative of what we've seen along this canal in certain areas. So we are going to start that here very shortly. We actually have, this was just approved recently to go under construction, so that should start with pre-construction probably next month and then moving forward on that, and that will take about a year or so to complete that portion. There's other portions that ultimately that we'll be working on afterwards, but this next phase will be starting soon. And this is the last one, Accelerate Swale and Culvert Program. This is, I don't know, do you want to talk about this one?
Good morning.
Morning.
I just want to give you a brief update on two programs that we're actually instituting. One is the Swale Accelerating Program and also the Residential Culvert Program for our residents. Basically what we did is in the Public Works Department is that we actually created a loan program to assist residents in the aspect of replacing their culverts. Currently within this program, we have currently vetted 5 residents that have signed agreements to actually move forward in the process. Secondly, we have 4 additional residents as a whole that's being vetted and making sure they actually can proceed in the process as well. Additional, we have 20 property owners that's actually being vetted as well, and their properties are being pending upon approval as we move forward to try to get those residents vetted as well. Staff will continue to coordination with the homeowners to make sure we streamline the process to the point that we can get each and every one vetted and moving forward through the process. When we began the process, it started out kind of slow, but seems like the word is actually getting out there now, excuse me, and individuals are starting to sign up for the loan program.
Madam Mayor, as we do with the utilities that we provide you a memo every quarter, we'll go ahead and start doing the same thing so you can stay aware of how many are coming through and how many are being processed.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was going
I'm
to say,
sorry.
maybe you could just give us a more detailed report at the July workshop, and as opposed to memos.
It's fine. If you want a
I don't
presentation.
know, Council, how you feel, but this way we have a broader view instead of having to do memos all the time and then wondering if there's so many memos that come out. I think
Okay.
it's more worthy of like a presentation, like, just
All right, we'll get into the details of that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And as I move on to the accelerated program for our swale our maintenance program, currently we have the 1,301 PSLs that's outstanding for the residents. New constructions, we have about 1,600, and also natural swales, we have about 308 natural swales that actually need liner replacement. As we evaluate the program, we want to try to look at how we can expedite this here. One of the things we wanted to try to do is try to seek some funding that would actually give us the opportunity to hire more contractors to help expedite the construction aspect of it as far as moving forward to help accelerate the program. And hopefully with the additional funding, we can pretty much end up taking care of all of the 1 PSLs, all of the new home construction, and all of the natural swells, which is about 3,334 total to complete. And if we complete those, we could probably get those done in about 3 years with the additional accelerated, to help us accelerate the program with the funding.
That's very important. It's really important to be able to do that. We've been talking about this for a long time. You know, we had the delay when we changed the program, but then realized that we really needed to add it back. So whatever we can do to accelerate it, we do need to make it a priority, for sure.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. City Manager, I know that budget is obviously changing. Stephen, I know budget is changing, but if we get our estimate in and then our estimate has an excess, and we always have sometimes we have a small amount of excess, and then the city manager gives us the options to select of what other projects in July that we would like to use that for, I would like this added to that list so we could review in July. And because it's one of those numbers that we might just have close to what we need to fund it if the council so chooses to, with all the other priorities we're going to have to look at.
Yeah. We can't keep kicking it down the road. We have to make sure that we're getting this done. It's been a long time coming, just really since the change that we made.
I would like to try to get a grant for it. I just wonder, because we're like the only city, I think, in Florida that has this SWIL type of program. I just wonder if we can get it to resonate with the state and the federal side to fund it. That's why it might have to come from our general fund. That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Yeah, Mayor and Vice Mayor. Yes, that's Kate Brumley for the record. That is something our team has looked at. I know we've worked with Office of Emergency Management as well, trying to see if we can, in the Public Works Department, and at Lewis's actually suggestion is it's been really innovative in trying to figure out, can we obtain funding for what's considered often maintenance, which is a really difficult category funding to obtain. But we are looking at options and seeing if there's any way we can kind of innovatively package this, because it is kind of a unique challenge we have, and the breadth of this system that we have.
And I think that's, Kate, I think it's one of those things where it's, thinking of Senator Harrell and her work with Everglades, it just might be something that we want to present to her on a global scale. She's probably obviously seen the swales throughout the years, but really working with her for her to know that we're like the only city that's doing it this way, and how it's helping move water. And it's like kind of hallmark project that other Florida cities should adopt if they're able to, especially if they don't have underground.
That's a very good point. We'll research further and see if there's a way to repackage and help to explain that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it? All right, thank you, Council.
Thank you. Before we move on to developer-funded, obligated, I want to bring up another section, Crosstown Village Fairgreen. It's not a project. We need to figure out how to make it a project. We have significant delays out there. Even as early as this morning, it wasn't just about the backups. It's the backups they had some light timing issues, I guess, but looking at it, it seems like there's a tech out there working on that. But we really need to address that area and the turn lanes.
The turn lane.
I mean, it's constantly coming up in conversation. I know it's going to come up when I go out to Vitalia next month. It's come up with someone in Heritage Oaks. It's coming up with people from the Central Park area. We really need to address that intersection. And I know it's one of those where we could never have anticipated the growth out there, right? Especially with the Central Park community, but we need to get this in as a project to get addressed, whether it be from an application coming in, and we know that somebody wants to develop a parcel out there, Council, because I'm aware that that might be one thing that is happening, or if not coming soon enough, we need to make sure we address that, because it's just going to keep coming up, and we can't keep pushing that area down the road. There's just way too much growth out there.
Madam Mayor and Council, I would like to just provide a brief update on that. The team just met in regards to the Tradition DRI amendment, And I know that's been a concern for staff and for the council. And we're at a place with our community partner, being Mattamy, that they will be moving that, receiving and extending the lanes of Fairgreen and Crosstown with that Tradition DRI amendment. They have agreed to doing that.
Okay.
Since there is going to be some movement on that soon, I think we should have that application hopefully in front of us in April, late March, April.
Perfect. Madam Mayor.
Hold on a second. Colca.
I was just going to give you an update. Antonio let us know that the staff out in the field determined that it was a pedestrian crosswalk button that was stuck and malfunctioning. It's been fixed, so they're monitoring to make sure it's working properly as can be for right now.
Okay.
Very cool.
Go ahead, sorry.
Just before we close out stormwater, I know that obviously we're going to have a larger discussion in July. I like the before and afters, but I do think that the education piece is so important with stormwater because the residents don't understand fully where the money goes to. So I was thinking if we do any form of outreach and or video, to me it'd be interesting to look at the history of the city with the stormwater. Basically from swamp to storm ready, essentially. It might take a little bit of effort because you're going to have to go back and pull some old photos. But I do think pulling, for example, what US 1 looked like in a storm, which I'm sure there's a picture somewhere, and what happened after EWIP. Looking at Floresta, which is even more recent, what Floresta and the sections that have been completed, what it was prior to that and underwater during a storm, and what it looks like today. And we live in a swamp, and so I really think that we need to show that story. Port St. Lucie and a lot of Florida is in a swamp. And we have to make us resilient and sustainable, livable, and we have to be storm ready. And so I would really like to see that presented or something like that presented prior to the stormwater presentation because I already know the city manager is going to ask for an increase in stormwater because I'm sure he's told everyone that. But to be comfortable with even discussing an increase with the board in the future, and I even think Councilman Bonner has brought this up in the last year. He really wanted to see the correlation of the importance of stormwater, the projects that are outstanding, the projects that need to be done for him to feel comfortable. If I remember back then even, tell me if I'm wrong, Anthony, but I remember him really wanting to see a better benefit to why he should approve a stormwater an additional funding to stormwater. And so, like him, I do want to see a better story told come July. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Clyde Coffey, Public Works. This morning, I just want to bring you a brief update on the developer-funded obligated projects, roadway projects. So Crosstown Parkway from Village to Range Line Road is pretty much complete as far as construction. We are going through the process of taking over this roadway obligation to the city, maintenance to the city. So the developer is providing us with the closeout packages right now. Marshall Parkway, Riverland portion from Parcel B, Phase 2. That portion is almost fully constructed as well, and pretty soon will be the developer will be turning it over to the city. Excuse me. Discovery Way at Riverland Parcel C, Phase 2. This portion is just starting construction. It is from the current ending of Discovery Way to North-South A, which would be the new name for it is Sundance Vista Boulevard, and that's going to be under construction pretty soon. They are actually started clearing. Sundance Vista at Riverland takes from Discovery Way south to Marshall Parkway, and that is near the start of construction as well. Sundance Vista, which is being done by Mattamy from the south end of Tradition Parkway to the new school. That portion is under construction. It's a little past 50% now. You can see it in the picture here. The school is under construction as well, going simultaneously with the roadway.
So for clarification, North-South A is Sundance Vista.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yes.
So we're no longer referring to North-South A as North-South A, it's called Sundance Vista.
And another portion of Sundance Vista Boulevard by Matme. This is just south of Crosstown Parkway. This portion takes it to the secondary access for one of the Cadence developments. And that is under design right now, and it will soon be under construction as part of their development. Fern Lake Drive, that's a connection that's been highly anticipated. It's under construction as well. It's part of a development of the Brinley development, which is just west of Fern Lake, and that should be completed later this year.
And another reason why Sundance Vista / North-South A is so important, especially near the school, is not only for that connection to the school, but south down to Discovery. And also, the fire district is planning for our next 3 fire stations. And looking at the call volume and the calls for service, we're looking at Western Grove and looking at that location that is dedicated right just below the school site. So in order to get that fire station going, we need to make sure we know that there's road access there. And as I may have mentioned before, it takes 3 to 4 years just to get an engine. And it takes 2 to 3 years just to get some ambulance or 2 that are needed. So because we have such a long wait time for these vehicles, or this rolling stock, we need to make sure that we're planning properly, comprehensively for those road accesses, so that when we need those fire stations, that they can be open, and get open, but they have to have the road in order to do so. So, going back to that conversation about public safety is not just about specifically law enforcement or specifically fire. You need to have the roads in place and the infrastructure in order for these stations to get built so that the services can be provided. So it's really important to make sure that we're getting these infrastructure projects done, and these developers are doing what they need to do in order to get it done, and working together on how we can facilitate getting them done faster as a result.
Yep. Madam Mayor, just a quick update. We're active in negotiations with Mattamy on North-South A. As you know, that the trigger for North-South A is not till 2030, so the city is looking at fronting some of the funding and get reimbursed back by the developer within 5 years after the investment. So
Right.
once we have something inked up, we'll go ahead and bring that to council for approval.
Another reason why mobility fees are so important, right? To be able to help us address issues like we are having right now with the fact that we have so much growth, but the infrastructure is not in yet, and how can we facilitate getting these things done faster? So,
And I think what's critical is that you also have that school coming in.
Yes.
And just think about using Tradition Boulevard just to bring traffic in and out. It's going to be a nightmare bringing traffic in through Tradition Boulevard when you already have 2 other schools there.
right, and that, another reason why the Fern Lake connection to West Cliff is so important as well. Because we
Absolutely.
need to have more than one in one way and out one way.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And it's Sundance Vista Boulevard, and that's, as City Manager just mentioned, that's under negotiation right now. Another portion is the Westcliff Lane, from the current, the continuation of Westcliff to Sundance Vista. Excuse me. That's also tied into construction of the development just to the south of that roadway. Becker Road widening from Village Parkway to North-South A, which is a continuation of Community Boulevard, and also Discovery Way widening between Village Parkway and between Village Parkway and Community Boulevard. Those triggers have been, we've actually notified the developer of those triggers going through, and so that's under negotiation as well to get these roadways constructed, or widened rather. And one other roadway I didn't mention, which is to the north, from the developer that's just been completed. We have from Glades Cutoff Road to Wilder Parkway. Yes, thank you. Wilder Parkway was just completed from to connect to the north. So we have that roadway in service right now as well.
Where are we with the FP&L getting power to the signalization at Marshall and Hegner?
Carl notified me that late last week the meter was in, so they're working with the contractor to get that activated and put into flash mode. So if everything keeps going good, once it's in flash mode, it'd be flash mode for 2 weeks and then go active. So we're right around the corner.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Looks like we got Tom coming back up here. Flash, is that your name for him? Okay, Flash, that's, you got it.
As soon as he gets the projects done in the flash, we'll give him that name.
That's, there you go.
I don't have full control over that. There's a whole other system out there that kind of runs it, but the state.
No, you're pretty good at being in charge of it.
You're the
there.
face of it. You own it. You got to own it.
Very good.
Yes, it's all my
Dave.
fault.
Very
Everything
good.
is my fault. Blame me.
So now you have a name. Now you have a
Oh,
nickname.
geez.
You're
All right.
Flash.
Well, before even getting that nickname and walking up here, I planned on walking up and going, the roads need to be paved, they're getting paved, we're done. Thank you, good day. I really was.
Yeah?
That was in my head to say that.
Yeah. That's very good, but
All right, it's been a little while since we've done an update to the paving and resurfacing plan, but here we are. We were just waiting on our new data, which was collected last year. We got it all back in late last year, got all our new numbers. So we're just presenting on changes, updates, and where we're going.
oh wait, one question though.
Go.
We made promises to residents when we had the old numbers in, right? I just want to make sure that when we've told residents, your road's getting repaved on, at this time, that those have been met, even though we may have different numbers now.
So if we follow the data, every 3 years there will be a reshuffling based on new data. Now, what we have been doing throughout the life of the paving program is notifying residents when we talk to them, this is currently what it is. It may change due to budget. It may change due to new data. We always, always, always point that out and make sure that we're relaying that to them, because just because I say something's going to be paved in 10 years, if it needs to be paved next year and it's way worse than something else, why should I wait 10 years if it needs to move up? And conversely, if it's in a good amount of shape and something is way worse, why should we spend the money? Although we have a plan set up that says we'll be there, it loses, it's almost diminishing returns with a 10-year plan. It's really nice to see where you're going to go in 10 years. The first 3 years are really what we should focus on, because when the new data comes in, it does cause that reshuffling. The first year is almost 100% guaranteed. Year number 2, 90%, because something may come up. A road may fail, a pipe may go down, something will come up, it'll be brought to our attention. Year number 3, you're at 85%. But right after that, your first year again, you're back at 100, or the year as you get into it is 100. So every year as we update the plan, we're definitely doing the roads we tell you that year.
Yeah, well, we need to do a little bit better in making sure if we're making promises outside of other emergencies that we get things done when we say we're going to get them done. Because it has been a huge complaint, and I do understand it, that we shouldn't say that, yes, your road is scheduled and we're going to get it done, especially for the people that have been waiting 10 or 15 years to get their roads done. And then we say, oh, at that mark, well, you know what, this one's a little bit worse, so we're going to push you further down the road. We really need to, if we're going to say these things, we need to try to keep it as close as possible, because that's what we're about. If we're telling you we're going to do it, we need to make sure we're getting it done. Because otherwise, people lose faith, and they lose trust and confidence in what we're saying, and we can't afford to do that. So,
Just a quick question on the repaving piece. The Rejuvenex, Is that for repaving or just when the road is constructed?
It's, we use it for repaving because it's more for residential streets. You really don't want to put it on high-speed roadways, and most of our newly constructed roadways are high-speed. So it can become more of an issue talking with the vendor about, where we should use it, where we shouldn't. We've used it on some 40-mile-an-hour roads that have a lot of stop-and-go conditions because it's typical you're going a little slower. But we are not yet, we don't consider it for new roads as part of the resurfacing program. It could be used. But I would be very wary unless something changes about putting it on high-speed roadways.
So for the internal residential streets, which I think is a lot of what, I'm assuming, Shannon, that's what you're talking about. Are we currently utilizing that within our resurfacing program, and when is it applied?
It's applied typically 3 years after we resurface the road. We come in and we spray the neighborhood that was done 3 years prior. And it's scheduled out that way and budgeted out that way, and that funding actually comes from the resurfacing budget. So it's part of the entire plan.
And it extends the roadway by how much you think?
It can extend the life of the roadway up to 5 years. If you do it twice, it can go 10. To be honest, what we're running up against is budgetary funding, how everything's working out. I am on the precipice of bringing forth the idea of maybe only doing one treatment to be able to pull more money into resurfacing to keep the plan more on schedule, because we haven't done it on any roads twice in any major location. I may want to do 1 or 2 neighborhoods so we can see if it actually provides the value at 2. We know it's doing it at 1. We're seeing the roads deteriorate slower. We're watching the numbers drop slower. I mean, they're always going to drop, but they're not dropping, off a cliff. So seeing that is promising. I haven't seen it, and I don't believe it till I see it. So I may do a couple of pilots just to check.
Yeah, I just think that whenever you get it sorted out, I think we do, as we communicate the resurfacing part of the Residence Road, we need to find a way to communicate the actual Rejuvenex part of it as well. So they understand that the maintenance that's being performed on the road may not be a brand new repaving, but we are providing continual maintenance to preserve the condition of the road. And so I just really wanted to point that out. And then to the mayor's point, and I don't know if this is a strategy, that's just me throwing it out, if for some reason we do have to push it back because we have a situation where you have a road that is critical, is there a consideration of can we rejuvenex the road that's being pushed back to make sure that while we're waiting to get the funding, that person's road isn't deteriorating further? Does that make sense?
Yeah, the issue is that the rejuvenant works in the early stages of the pavement. It doesn't work so much 20 years after the pavement's been down. It doesn't work so much 10 years after the pavement's been down, so it really wouldn't bring that effect. There's other things we could do. We could look at microsurfacing, which is putting a thin layer of asphalt on the road. But in Port St. Lucie, every road that was built by GDC was built with soil cement base. Everyone who drives down the street sees cracks in the road. The cracks don't mean the road's falling apart. It just means the underlying structure has cracks in it, and it reflects through the top. So I could pave a road tomorrow and have cracks in the road in 3 weeks. I could have it in 2 days, depending on what goes on the road. It's because of what's underneath. To fix that is so expensive. We're looking at we have a project that's almost complete design right now in the Gatlin Pines area where we did all the geotechnical testing. We saw that the roads were bad. We have a design to go in and reconstruct the roads. We're over $2 million for a couple of streets where I can go in and pave for a couple $100,000. So as we find these really bad areas where it's triage, it's like the hospital, which does your pinky hurt or is your head falling off? Which we need to take care of the heads that are falling off first, and that's what we're using all the data for. And again, Rejuvenate it's good in the first 3 to 6 years. They really want you to use it in year 1 or 2, but it does apply in 3, and that's why we wait till 3. It extends the life. We've seen the roads drop slower.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, I was just lots of good comments. I was just gonna really reinforce what you were saying because it's so important is, people can understand changes in a 10-year plan, but 3 years is, close enough that people think you ought to be able to foresee what might happen. And so, it's really an issue of kind of trust in local government and trust in the institution. And so, I would only push things off within the 3-year period if it's absolutely necessary, which I'm sure is your approach to it. But I just wanted to reiterate your comments because they were so important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll get to that a little later here. And I know this is great conversation up front. You kind of see what's coming. So as we move into how big our network is, I know everybody likes this one, so I brought it again. We have increased our centerline mileage by 8 miles over the last time you saw me up here. We have increased our lane miles by 111. Now, those two doesn't seem to make sense. How does that math work, Tom? Well, our newest data collection actually did square yardage of all lanes, turn lanes, intersections. So we're not just going off straight lines anymore. We're actually picking up the full total area of our roadways. And when you run that number, you end up with, we have 111 more additional miles that weren't being identified in our previous plans because they were just picking center line up. So again, we've now almost made it to Canada. If you look, if you look on the bottom right there, we're almost to Canada. Eh? So as we move to our friends to the north, that is one single lane of maintenance ownership that is all ours, all the way up I-95. That's a lot. That's a lot for one city to have under their belt. And again, we're doing the best we can, and that's why we use all the methods we have, including the pavement rejuvenate.
Thank you for this slide. I will have Brandon update my presentation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Our methodology currently has shifted a little bit since our last time that we met, and that's when I brought to you that it's very hard to equitably distribute the funding if the roads aren't equitably falling apart and if they're not equally distributed per council district. So this just shows you how many miles are approximately in each district, and a better way of us looking at it. For us to be equitable, you would do a percentage of the funding to make it equal throughout the districts if the roads are in bad shape. If the roads are in great shape, such as in District 2 where you have a lot of newer roads, these are usually the main roads. There's a lot of planned unit developments, a lot of interior areas that we don't touch. That is where, why should I go, here we go again, why should I go and spend a bunch of money to pave a road that's in good shape when I should be taking care of the one that looks like the moon? So just, we've made an adjustment, we've started to do that now, and we've also included all of the roadways, because if you recall previously, CIP was taking care of multi-lane roadways, and I was seeing that that was a disservice to us as a city and to our roadway network. So we pulled that out, and now all the roadways are being looked at holistically. So if a main road, such as Eroso, Crosstown, has a worse condition than a residential street, but they're both roughly equal, which one's more important? I tend to believe it's the one that has the most traffic, the one that can affect the most residents, and the one that's going to fall apart the fastest because of all of the extra traffic. So we're putting an emphasis on our main roads, our arterials, on our collectors to make sure they get brought up to speed, since more people use them to get from here to there and back to emergency services. I want to keep them being able to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, as safely as possible.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense.
So, Madam Mayor, just a question, Tom, as far as long-term strategy for the city. You have so many interior residential roads, and so when I look at the resurfacing plan, and maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, I've always visualized that plan to be the internal roads for the residential neighborhoods. So with an arterial or a main arterial or minor like Eroso, I would like to explore this discussion further with you, because to me, when you're dealing with something that important and that is dealing with that much traffic, I want to make sure that we're dealing with a long-term plan. So when you're resurfacing the road, you could also remill the road. You could also really repair the road for the long term, and that might be a separate project outside of the resurfacing plan. And so when it's a big road like that has a lot of traffic, I almost feel like it needs to purposely be out of the resurfacing plan, because we should probably be treating that one 100% different because of the impact it has. So it is whatever the council wants, but it's apples and oranges, I think, when we're talking about residential streets versus those two roads.
And you're right, and we do. And for example, Bayshore north of Prima Vista. It's a road that's been falling apart, kept falling apart. We paved it, it got worse again really fast. The data showed that it was falling apart faster. We went out, we tested the road, we checked it. This road needs to be rebuilt. The design's underway. So it was pulled out of the resurfacing program. We did a little bit to kind of get us by in between, but it's not part of resurfacing. And then once you get these newer roads built, the resurfacing doesn't take as much of a chunk out of your budget. It doesn't take as much of the roads are built way better than they were when GDC ran through here, and we find that they put a washing machine underneath the middle of the road.
Yeah.
So-
And then talking about public trust, which I so appreciate you bringing up that comment, Councilman Bonner, because, I think because of the discussions that has been happening with local government, even though I don't feel like we should have lost the public trust, there has been a loss of public trust. I think the roads really do provide the public a lot of trust. It's funny, on a previous council, Shannon, you probably remember, and Stephanie, you as well, we used to say that. We used to say, there's nothing like fresh blacktop when a resident sees that, knowing where their money and their tax dollars are going. So whenever we can do that, it's important. But I say that for the main arterials too. I'm going to use St. James, sorry, County, but it's the one that comes to mind. I'm not trying to pick on you. But when I look at St. James and they continue to patch it, or they continue to repave it, or do a small section or whatever, and it's falling apart, it frustrates the residents because they're like, you're not, and more people see that. And so that's why I say, whenever possible, whenever council can, I think we just, when a road needs to be repaved, that it's a major road like that, most of the time, I'm not an engineer, it needs to be rebuilt. And I would rather have that discussion, because that's what a lot of residents see, and that's what they get really ticked off about when they drive to work every day, or travel.
And with that in mind, we, as part of our recent data collection, we actually got GPR done. So we had ground penetrating radar done, and we're waiting on those results, which can show us places at quick look. Where's the road not thick enough? Where's it not thin enough? We're getting more data to be able to help with that, where in the past it's been, we pave a road, it falls apart within 2 years. That's a trigger. Or you go out and you do geotechnical testing every 500 feet on every inch of roadway, which is very costly. And maybe you skip the spot that's failing. You don't see it till it happens. So when we're seeing those things, we program them in for separate projects. And just because of the competing priorities with all of the infrastructure that we need to build with our capital improvement funds, this is the best option for now. Going into the future, it's not, this is the plan, it's going to stay this way, we're only going to do these things. We are always looking to innovate, change, and do what's best.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just another road that I just want to highlight that's going to be coming in front of City Council in the future is Gatlin Boulevard. I think
Right.
you identify that road. But think about resurfacing all that and fixing all that issue. That's going to be a tremendous impact to our budget. So just going to highlight that I understand promises made, absolutely. But sometimes certain roadways just come out of nowhere because, as you know, a lot of the traffic during the construction of PSA Boulevard came down Gatlin. And it
Right.
seems like now the traffic between the PSA Boulevard and 95 in that area is tremendous.
It is absolutely tremendous, and the one that continuously drives me insane, because I drive it almost every day, but you all know what I'm going to say, and it's Gatlin-Savona intersection. It's crumbling. I hate it. It looks horrible. It is horrible. We get complaints. I know things are underway. I know we're getting there, but it just has to get done because, to your point, Jolene, people are seeing it, and they're right. And when they're right, we got to fix it. And we
But
got to
the
figure
issue-
out the fastest way to do
And you
it.
know this, but how do you go there and fix a road when you're going to be tearing it up in a short time?
Right, but that's what I mean. In this instance,
Communication.
by fixing it,
Yeah.
is we're going to have to do a repaving,
Yeah.
and it's going to either have to come from that plan, that project, or what we're doing with the intersection improvements. Well, to that point, wouldn't we want those two things to happen simultaneously? The
Exactly.
full repaving and plus the intersection improvement? So what does that look like?
We are well positioned now with, as I spoke about during the CIP update, with the possible redesign to better suit the future layout for Gatlin Boulevard there at the intersection. We're well positioned to hit a mark where we can combine everything.
Great.
Had we gone out and built it prior, we would have built something that would have had to been ripped up. And to Mr. City Manager's point, how does that look?
Right.
We would have gone out and built these lanes no one can use because the receiving area wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then when we built the receiving area, we'd have to rip it out to make it work usable. That's just, my brain goes sideways sometimes. I mean,
Well,
more than normal.
I think all of our brains would go sideways, so, not just yours. So.
I mean, I'm always a little off kilter. All right, so here's just a history of the plan. 17-18 we started. We are paying about $83,000 per center line mile of residential streets. We're at $141,000 per center line mile. So another challenge of trying to make our promises kept, promises made. You know, it's if prices go up, which they haven't, as much wood as I can find, I'm going to knock on it, which they haven't for a while, thank goodness. You have a change in the plan. If the prices go up by double, how do you fund it when you don't have the funding? So that becomes the game of moving the money around if you can. And Mr. City Manager is amazing at helping us find additional funds when we do. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get a little further on. Our arterial and collectors are $225,000 per center line mile. And that's just, it's a quick takeoff. Some of them are 3 lanes, some of them are 6 lanes. I just used a 12-foot kind of average and extrapolated it. So you got wider lanes, you go deeper with the asphalt because that's how they're built and they last longer. You got pavement markings, and we want to do it at night. We do not want to inconvenience the traveling public during the day because we know that they're already going through it. So there's additional cost that comes with all of that. Preservation, as we spoke about a little earlier, you can see the truck there laying it down. It's kind of like it's basically like it's not a sealer, but it kind of soaks into the asphalt and it reactivates the flexibility of the asphalt. Asphalt is a flexible pavement. Concrete is a rigid pavement. Concrete doesn't like to move, it likes to crack. The only reason our asphalt cracks is because underneath it, the soil, cement, concrete base is cracking. That's all you're seeing is just that reflection. So putting this into the top layer of asphalt within that first 3 years allows it to remain flexible. And we don't have the freeze thaw down here except for just recently. But we don't have like what they have up north, where you have long-term freeze thaw where the water gets into the base, expands, breaks the roads up. We have oxidation from the sun. That's what's doing it. Putting this flexibility back in the asphalt allows it to move under traffic, allows it to heal itself. That's kind of a term they use in the industry. It heals as it goes and just gives you a little bit longer before it loses its flexibility, becomes rigid, cracks like concrete. Those costs have gone up, but I mean, not bad at all. Versus repaving a road, you're looking at $1.23 for spraying the rejuvenant on and getting 5 years or per square yard, or you're looking at it's roughly $17 a square yard to resurface. And if you actually wanted to rebuild a road, to Vice Mayor's point, you're looking at $29 to $50 a square yard. And those numbers get real big real fast with those wider roadways.
I'm glad you put the costs in there because I think it's important to share with the public what that looks like. So I'll be adding those slides to my presentation too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Our progress this year, we are right on schedule. And actually, if you remember previous years, we've been behind schedule. Our paving vendor, who's been working with us for many years, actually put on another crew to keep up with our demand. They saw the need, they saw that we meant business and that we want to get things done, and they are doing a great job right now. The paving year to year is scheduled on repairs to either utilities, repairs to drainage, repairs to anything else that may have to happen before we pave, because we don't want to rip the road back up afterwards. So prior to the year starting, and once council usually receives this presentation, I provide the next year's, because we know that's at 100% worth of resurfacing, to all of our partners and our colleagues here at the city. They start to begin to build out what they need to do prior to us getting there so that when it's time to pave, we can go to work. We have a couple areas that are being taken care of right now. Once they're done, we'll be able to release the resurfacing contractor to those. But with the cold weather, we haven't been able to go anywhere anyway, so I say we're right on schedule. We are on schedule for the year, and here's some more. Our pavement condition index from the 22, 23, 24, you see it was rising. We had a big jump in 25 with our new data collection, and as you can see from the asterisks, it's the inclusion of the multi-lane roadways in the calculation. Again, these roadways are a lot newer, they're built to a better standard, and they fall apart a lot slower. So they added an additional bump, and that's okay. This is our adjustment year. Now that's our number. We're going to stay at 67. It's going to stay flat for a little while, and then it's going to start to drop off again. That is, I'll get on that next slide. The current budget levels, we are maintaining with the assistance of the half-cent sales tax. We need about 10.5 approximately per year. We have 7.2 just for resurfacing alone, resurfacing and preservation. We have 7.2 in the CIP, and the half-cent sales tax has been so helpful in keeping us on schedule and moving our numbers up. I mean, you can't deny that we've gotten better. If the half-cent sales tax should not be renewed or doesn't have a chance to be renewed, that could be a problem. So, I mean, just showing the true value of what that's done for us is huge to me, and I believe it should resonate with everyone in the room. We have applied all of our roadways that were done in 21-22 because we're on our 3-year. And here's the side-by-side. I know this is never fun to look at. It's not the easiest thing for your brain to collect on. That's why I provide the arrows. So what we're saying is over last year's paving plan, we have added $0 to the 10-year proposed estimated budget. However, we have lost 28.2 centerline miles of roadway. This is simply because we've added the multi-lane roadways in. They're wider, they cost more. This is the Band-Aid year. I'm ripping the Band-Aid off. I'm going, we need, for now, unless somebody tells me different, I want to show that this works. So we're not meeting the optimal 10-year goal. Again, I think it's an artificial number now that we're addressing the plan in a different way and in a more holistic way.
Okay.
We've kind of touched on all of these already. Contributing factors to why that drop in centerline mileage over the 10-year cycle, we've included the multi-lane roadways. Gatlin Boulevard resurfacing is a big one. Gatlin Boulevard was added to the half-cent sales tax as one of the main projects back in 2018. There was just a number assigned to it. I can't speak to where the number came from. It was $1.25 million. Over the years, I've had run some calculations, and I kept going, okay, it's going to be more, but I had to wait till we had funding to do a design. It is scheduled for next fiscal year for resurfacing through the half-cent sales tax at $1.25 million. When I got the design done, because, again, we talked about roads falling apart, making sure it's not underneath, we had the whole road tested, all up and down. All it needs is extra asphalt, more than we normally would have. We normally would have done 1.5 inches. It needs 2 inches. Everything shows that the base is fine. It's just the road's falling apart from all the traffic. So good, we have that data now. We just have to increase the amount of asphalt that goes down. The price goes up. Now you see that we estimate per the plan that it's about $4.4 million to do the entire run from Brighton to Edgar's. That leaves out the piece from Edgar's to Tradition that we did when we widened Gatlin Boulevard way back. Because, again, it's not falling apart in the same way. The scores are much higher. And then it stops at Brighton because that was just recently redone as part of the PSL in Gatlin, which was, I believe, like 5-6 years ago, it feels like. Maybe longer. I don't know. I can't. Time is a construct. So what we're seeing in the half-cent sales tax is we have budgeted $1.25 million. I needed to come up with $3.15 million. That is also contributing to why the mileage is down. I had to pull that from other projects that were not in as bad a shape. Gatlin Boulevard is a multi-lane roadway and a highly traveled roadway is one of our worst PCI scores. It is, and it just has to be done. It's not a want, it's a need for the amount of people that travel on it. Whoops, sorry.
So when are we getting it done?
It is scheduled for fiscal year 26-27. So October 1st is going to be the start of that budget year. My hope is to get a contractor on board as early as possible so that we can get jumping on it right away. I'm looking ahead. I'm getting the design is done. There may be a couple little tweaks we add to it, sales tax signage, things like that to show what we're doing. But it is top of mind. It is my number one.
And we're going to do it at night, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I ran the numbers. It's like 3 months worth of work if you do it really slow.
So while we're talking about that, and we're talking about Brighton, and that horrible, whatever you call it, intersection where the Aldi's is, what are we doing about that because of the number of traffic accidents we have? It makes sense, if we're going to be doing that, we address that area all at one time so we're not touching things twice. So where are we with that? What does that look like? Because it's just a disaster.
So we have reached out to an engineer to help us design that and make sure we're not going to create an additional safety concern. Because yes, I agree, that is a safety concern with that median opening, but we also want to make sure we're not, putting that safety concern at the intersection there. That proposal would be a 60-day design period, and the thoughts would be essentially the left turn lane that is at Brighton, we would close that off and it would become an extension of the left turn lane at PSL Boulevard. So right now, we are finalizing that proposal, and we're going to get it moving ASAP.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and the third and final option for the contributing factors, again, we spoke about it, is the new data. Shifting things around to do the worst first because we are so far, behind to try to get things done. Those are your reasons. And that follows up with our new maps showing what we'll be doing in 2-year slices. As usual, I didn't want to change format since everybody's familiar with it. Kind of showing you where we're going. And then the one that really hits home, there's your 10-year estimated proposed plan. And our funding. I don't like the one on the right because the sales tax stops.
And the funding besides sales tax is also gas tax, I'm assuming?
Yes.
How is gas tax doing? I mean, it's supposed to be a regressive tax, it's supposed to be declining. Are we seeing it declining? And obviously, we all celebrate that gas is going down in price, but that also affects the collection of taxes. So what does that look like?
Caroline, are you looking into that?
She's looking it up.
Okay.
We do see slight increases, but that is more related to our population growth. So with more people moving into the city, living in the city, and frequenting the gas station. So that's why we do see a slight increase.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, with that, we're just requesting that you accept the roadway preservation and resurfacing plan so that I can release it to our partners in the other departments to start planning their work.
All right, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're at our 5 minutes before our lunch break. We're going to stop here, do our lunch break. When we come back, I believe we have Mr. Hunter for the economic outlook, so we'll have that presentation, and then we'll go back to our CIP projects presentation, starting with major facility projects update.